The Journey in Marvel Magician. Chapter 61. Blake, who just came out of Azkaban, obviously hasn't learned to restrain his temper. After all, he has been tortured by Dementors for 12 years. It is normal to have his temper to vent. So Black saw Kreacher crying and talking to himself constantly on the experimental table, but he never said what Li Feng took away. The backlog of resentment in his heart couldn't help but want to vent by beating Kreacher. Fortunately, Dumbledore put some chocolate in his pocket when he went to Black's old house. Just eating a piece of chocolate can heal the Dementor's happy attack. This is also an effective way to recover after contact with the Dementor. Handing the chocolate to Blake, Dumbledore said, "Blake, order Kreacher to tell what Li Feng took." Gobbled down the chocolate, feeling a lot of Black looking at Kreacher, and commanded, "Now, immediately tell me what was taken away." Kreacher stopped crying under Black's order and whispered, "It's a locket. It's the most evil item in this house." Before his death, Master Regulus ordered Kreacher to destroy the box, but Kreacher didn't use it. Neither a drill nor an axe can destroy the box, Kreacher disappointed Master Regulus. "Dumbledore, what kind of locket is it?" Kreacher looked at Dumbledore, as if he had just found him, and bowed respectfully and said, "The greatest white necromancer in the wizarding world, Sir Albus Dumbledore, good evening. It is a large snake with a shell depicting Anne's shape. S locket was stolen by Master Regulus from the Dark Lord, and the box contained the Dark Lord's secret." Dumbledore was stunned, and seemed to be asking Kreacher as if he was talking to himself, "Snake. The locket is related to the Dark Lord. Is it Salazar Slytherin's relic?" Kreacher said that he was just a house elf, and didn't know what the Slytherin relic was. He only knew that he had not fulfilled the last wish of Regulus Master. On the side, Black seemed to be aware of something, and said annoyedly, "Austin just pretended to show me the appearance of a wealthy fan. He knew from the beginning to the end that there were things mysterious people needed in the secret basement of the Black family, but he was forced to. I came to Azkaban to rescue me after being unable to enter the basement. It seemed that I agreed to allow him to enter the basement to get paid, but in fact he wanted to get the broken locket." Dumbledore frowned and said, "No matter what the mysterious man wants, we can't let him get it. The most important thing at the moment is to find Austin, Blake. Please remember what Austin said and think about him. Where will it hang out?" For a long time, Blake said with a wry smile, "Maybe I am not suitable for inquiring about intelligence by nature, and I cannot tell where Austin will appear. The only thing I know is that he was penniless when we first met and was unfamiliar with London." Now, Blake glanced at the compartment where Jin Jelong was stored, and said, "Yes, he is very interested in refitting locomotives. Maybe he will buy parts to refit locomotives." Lupin, who was silently guarding Blake, said suddenly, "If Austin hasn't left London, we can find it in hotels and other places, but we don't know whether he will stay in the Muggle World Hotel or the Wizarding World. It's simple, after all, there are only so few." "Good idea." Dumbledore motioned to everyone to leave the basement and said, "I went to Azkaban to investigate how the Dementors were controlled." Lupin and Kreacher went to find Austin's whereabouts. As for Sirius Magic, although the Ministry does not know that you escaped, you'd better hide at home. While talking, Dumbledore glanced at Black, not waiting for Dumbledore to disbelieve what Black said about the Dementors, but in this world, most magic has a corresponding resolving spell. Since now Li Feng is the enemy friends don't know, Dumbledore definitely wants to know more about Li Feng so that he can take precautions when fighting in the future. The three returned to the gate of the old house. Dumbledore said to Lupin and Kreacher, who were looking for Li Feng's presence, "Considering that the other party can cast spells silently and without a wand, after you find Austin, don't disturb each other. Focus on surveillance. Wait, I am making plans when I come back." Lupin nodded, walked to the side of the road, raised his wand, and summoned the night bus. Soon, a 3-story night bus stopped in front of Lupin Ping. The conductor looked at the magic wand in Lupin's hand and whispered, "Oh, another one with a magic wand. I thought I could see the one who could catch up. What about the Chinese of the bus?" Lupin, who got on the bus, looked at the conductor subconsciously and asked, "Have you seen a Chinese necromancer?" At the door of the old house, Dumbledore, who was asking Black to describe the details of Li Feng's spell, turned his head to look at the returning night bus, raised his brows and looked at Lupin, who was on the bus, and asked, "Have you forgotten something?" Quote. Lupin thanked the conductor, turned and walked to Dumbledore, with a slightly surprised expression on his face, and said, "Professor, I know where Austin is." He boarded the Cavaliers bus not far from the Black House. The car that got off at the Broken Axe Bar is probably sleeping in the Broken Axe Bar now. Dumbledore said with a little surprise. Broken Axe Bar. Didn't he rush to hand the locket to the mysterious man? Lupin shrugged and said, "I don't know this. Maybe the locket has been handed over to the mysterious man, maybe." After that, Lupin looked at Black and continued. Maybe Austria Sting was not a subordinate of a mysterious person, but simply saw a magic item on the experimental table, thought it was a precious item, and took it away. Dumbledore thought for a while and felt that what Lupin said was possible. After all, normal people would always be a little curious after seeing it. Say, let alone the locket is destroyed, it can't even be opened, this is still the house elves who can cast spells without a wand. Black realized what Dumbledore was thinking, and turned to Kreacher and said, "You go to the Broken Axe Bar. If Austin is in the bar, you will record his every move and wait for Dumbledore to get from Azkaban. Tell him everything when the class comes back." Kreacher nodded slightly and said to himself, "I am very happy to serve the Black family. I have work to do again." As soon as the voice fell, Kreacher disappeared in front of the three people in an instant, and appeared in the Broken Axe Bar again. He creptly looking for Austin in the bar room. After a while, Kreacher stood outside a room with a grin and listened. When Li Feng Roar was asleep, he was beating Roar. "This is Austin's voice. I heard him talking to the little master before. I remember this voice." After Kreacher talked to himself, he thought about Black's instructions, stare at Austin. It shouldn't be considered staring outside the door, but staring at Austin from the bedside. When Kreacher appeared in the room, Li Feng's Roar grunt disappeared instantly. After traveling through several worlds, Li Feng has long been accustomed to staying on guard at Otherworld at all times. Even if he is lying on a soft bed, he still has the vigilance he should have. So when Kreacher suddenly appeared on the head of his bed, Li Feng before opening his eyes, he stretched his hand to the long knife aside. When Li Feng raised his knife to see that he was a familiar house elf, he asked in an uncertain tone, "Kreacher, did Black ask you to come to me?" Kreacher, who didn't care when he heard the glass breaking sound around him, nodded slightly, and muttered in a low voice, "Mudblood, thief, you stole Master Regulus' locket." Before Kreacher finished muttering, Li Feng pointed a long knife to the scroll that wrapped the locket, rolled his eyes and said, "I know how to destroy it. ... Destroy it." As a loyal house elf, always thinking about how to complete Regulus' orders, he was about to drive Kreacher crazy. Coupled with prolonged contact with the locket, his heart was a little distorted. I heard Li Feng could help destroy the locket, but Kreacher became clear-headed. The so-called old people, some old Kreacher obviously understand that Li Feng will not help him in vain. In exchange, Kreacher said that he is only a elves loyal to the Black family, and only Li Feng said what conditions he needed. A reply can only be given after considering the interests of the Black family. Kreacher blinked his big eyes to look at Li Feng, and said in a humble tone, "Dear Mr. Austin, what are your conditions?" Inwardly, Kreacher thought that as soon as Li Feng opened his mouth, he had the right to refuse the other party's request. After all, Dumbledore was also interested in this locket belonging to the mysterious person. The mysterious man is also interested in destroying the locket when he is doing Dumbledore. Conditions. Li Feng scratched his eyebrows. For a while, he really didn't think of any conditions. After the meeting, Li Feng thought of the props he needed most and said, "Do you know how to translate English translated into Muggles Chinese or American English?" On the contrary, Li Feng's conditions made Kreacher so clear-headed a little vague. It wasn't that the conditions were too difficult, but it was too simple, so simple that he didn't need to operate it personally. Blinking, Kreacher said cautiously, "Dear Mr. Austin, if you have fewer books to translate, Kreacher is happy to help you. If you have more books to translate, Kreacher reminds Mr. you can buy quill pen for translation." Li Feng was stunned. In his impression, the necromancer in this world likes to isolate himself from the sight of the world. Even if he communicates with the outside world, he is with the necromancer from abroad, not with Muggles. After Kreacher's explanation, Li Feng remembered that although the necromancer in this world likes to be isolated, there are still a group of people who like the Muggle world and make a living from it. For example, Hogwarts has a subject called Muggle Studies, study. And this group of people studying Muggles will inevitably use books, newspapers, etc. to gather information, so quill pens for translation are also born. Since the quill pen can translate Muggle books into the books of the wizarding world, and vice versa, the quill pen can also translate the books of the magical world into the books of the Muggle world, but this kind of quill pen is a bit expensive. After all, too few people are needed. But who is Li Feng? He regards Black's basement small vault as his own home. Is he the one who lacks that Jin Zilong? There are more than 2 ways to destroy the locket. Li Feng knows more than 2 methods, such as his own pseudo-angel feather or the spell on Thea Solomon's key. This book is full of spells to restrain the devil, and most of the time the devil chooses to possess human beings. In order to save the mankind and eliminate the devil at the same time, Li Feng learned a lot of exorcism. The behavior of hiding the soul in the locket like the mysterious person is barely considered possession, so Li Feng has a way to expel the soul of the mysterious person from the locket. The only uncertainty is that the soul of the mysterious man is currently considered to be human. Li Feng does not know whether the magic used to destroy the devil can be effective. Trade. Is the locket empty? In consideration of the above, after listening to Creature's introduction to the special quill pen for translation, Li Feng pinched his nose while admitting that he was unlucky and said, Method 1, find Gryffindor's sword. That thing can break the locket. Quote. The corner of Creature's mouth twitched. He definitely knew about Gryffindor's sword, but he also knew that it had been missing for hundreds of years. He was found by other people who were looking for the sword, and in order to swallow the sword alone, he would be dried into dried meat. With his eyes wide open, Creature said quietly, how about Method 2? Li Feng, who is sure that Harry is in the 2nd grade, definitely knows that the basilisk has appeared, but he doesn't know where the plot has progressed. Scratching his head, Li Feng asked, do you know who is staring at the basilisk? Creature thought about it for a while, and then said uncertainly, the basilisk you are talking about is a dangerous snake with extraordinary abilities hatched from a male egg under the body of Toad. Li Feng nodded with a grin. To tell the truth, even if Li Feng thought he had magician status and had seen enough strange species, he still couldn't help but want to laugh when he heard a male egg. How busy do you say this egg-laying rooster is? Let's not talk about which organ the egg of this rooster conceived from, but that the rooster will crow and lay eggs. Is this preparing to take the hen's job and make yourself a workaholic? What does this make to the hen in the same bed? And how idle is the toad that hatched eggs? This is really hatching play. Seeing Li Feng nodded and confessed, Creature clearly felt a surging blood flow in his body to his brain, and the cerebral thrombosis was washed away at once, and he was refreshed, or was he angry? If it weren't for the Ministry of Magic's strict order that the house elves could not harm humans, Creature really wanted to split Li Feng's brain while he was sober. Where can the legendary basilisks be found in reality? Can the basilisk destroy the locket? Why don't you open up Merlin's coffin and let Merlin drag the mysterious man into the underworld? Seeing Creature's eyes full of contempt, Li Feng couldn't guess what Creature was thinking, and said indifferently, I really know where there are basilisks. The problem is that I can't beat that stuff unless you find a way to blind it, otherwise. Li Feng lay down on the bed and covered it with a quilt and said, otherwise, let's wash and sleep. Anyway, I won't face the basilisk alone. That's not called destroying the locket, that's called killing. Creature lowered his head by the bed, after a serious thought, gritted his teeth and said, if the basilisk loses those eyes, will you help me destroy the locket? Li Feng, resting with his hands and eyes closed, heard Creature's words and sat up and looked up at Creature, and said, listen to your tone, are you going to blind the basilisk even at the cost of your own life? Creature stared at Li Feng with bloodshot eyes and looked at Li Feng with a haughty appearance, and answered the question, my biggest ideal is to cut off my head like a mother and stick it on a piece of the Black family veneer. Is this an answer to my question from the side, but also a last word? Although he knew that the house elves were very loyal after acknowledging the Lord, Li Feng was still surprised by Creature's behavior. In order to not know how many years the former owner had died, he knew that he would sacrifice and fulfill his last wish. What does the current owner Sirius think? But, I seem to want such a faithful house elf. In fact, Li Feng really wants to destroy the locket, and there is a simple way, as simple as just waiting patiently. Even if Li Feng doesn't know where Harry's plot has progressed, the basilisk will definitely appear on the stage and coax the protagonist of this world under the impetus of the plot. Under the aura of Harry, the beautiful monster around him is called a pet. Ugly monsters are called delicious and juicy food, so the smelly and ugly basilisk is destined to be just a pile of delicious snake soup. Definitely, this requires you to have enough guts to try the taste of snake meat. People like Li Feng dare not try the taste of basilisk. Even if the basilisk is hatched from eggs, it is naturally crunchy with the taste of chicken. The meat quality is far more than the nutrition of beef n times the protein. If you dare not dare, Li Feng said that he would not eat the meat of the basilisk. The ghost knows if there is anything strange in this basilisk that has lived for hundreds of years. Parasites. Thinking of parasites wriggling in his body, Li Feng, who cherishes life, shuddered slightly, and said, "You tell me the quill pen for translation, and I will tell you 2 methods. This is very reasonable, but you want me risking my life to destroy the locket. Please forgive me for not being able to do it." Creature shook his head slightly, and said unconvinced, "But you can buy the quill pen I mentioned at the magical item store, but where can I buy the sword and basilisk you mentioned?" "That's something you want to investigate." Li Feng spread his hands and said, "Or we can change the deal. For example, we have agreed that as long as the locket is destroyed during the Hogwarts summer vacation this year, then you will have to wait." "My orders." "Sorry," Creature said without thinking, "I am the elf of the Black family, and I only serve the Black family." Although he knew that Creature could not be solicited in this way, Li Feng felt that it would be no problem to try it. Anyway, he would not get pregnant if he tried it. It was just that Creature's clean refusal made Li Feng somewhat unhappy. Don't ask what Sirius thinks. Some unwilling Li Feng still tried to seduce Creature, and said, "Perhaps Sirius is fed up with your neuroticism and agrees to transfer you to me." Creature was stunned. He knew how disgusting Sirius was for him. Now that Sirius knew that the locket belonged to a mysterious person, as soon as Li Feng started trading with the locket, Creature felt that he should change the owner 80% of the time. Creature was a little entangled. He originally planned to dedicate his life to the Black family, but now he destroys the locket according to Regulus's last wish and completes his last loyalty. On the other hand, he ignores Regulus's last wish and continues to spend the rest of his life dedicated to the Black family. After a long time, Creature, feeling confused again, chose to fulfill Regulus's last wish, and said, "I will go back to ask Sirius and give you an answer. I hope you can abide by it." After that, Creature, who was about to teleport back to Black's old house, started his magic and stared at Li Feng in a daze. What's the situation? Even Hogwarts, who prohibits apparitions, cannot prohibit teleportation of elf. Will there be a higher level of teleportation prohibition circle in the Broken Axe Bar? Li Feng grinned. The mirrored space is an independent space. If you can go out, there will be ghosts. Li Feng, who reached out to open the portal, signaled that Creature was trying to teleport. This time, Creature looked at Li Feng and muttered something while disappearing in front of Li Feng. After a while, the smiling Creature appeared in front of Li Feng again, murmured directly in his mouth, "Mudblood thief, delusional to be my master." When he saw Li Feng staring at him, Creature smiled silently. "Sirius asked me to tell you, get out." As for the reason for rejection, Creature imitated Sirius's words and said, "The house elf is a symbol of nobility. You just don't know where the poor ghost came from. Since you dare to use one that was stolen from my house. The broken locket is exchanged for the glory of the nobility. This is not a broken locket, but one of the Horcruxes of the mysterious man." Before Creature finished speaking, Li Feng looked at Creature and interrupted, "If you don't know what a Horcrux is, you can ask Sirius. I think the Black family, who have passed on for so many years, will know something about Horcruxes." Creature was stunned. He just knew that the locket was an item of the Dark Lord. He really didn't know what exactly it did. When Creature recalled what a Horcrux was, Li Feng continued, "Also, Sirius and I are the same. It was agreed that the things in the basement belonged to me when I took them, so strictly speaking, the locket is my reward for saving Sirius from Azkaban. It belongs to me, and I cannot be described as a thief. Also, Creature, we agreed that I will destroy the locket for you during Hogwarts summer vacation, instead of handing it to Sirius as a condition of exchange for you. If you want the locket, then wait. Let me add conditions. After all, you are not the only ones who want the locket, so I am not in the mood to bargain with you. Creature seemed to understand something, and said unbelievably, do you still want to trade with the Dark Lord? Isn't it okay to simply watch Sirius upset and frighten you? I thought so in my heart, but Li Feng said, can't it? Having had the experience of banning teleportation before, Creature understood that Li Feng was not someone who had no strength to fight back, especially when he thought of his former owner's life before stealing the locket, but Li Feng was going to trade with the mysterious person. This made Creature feel that his brain hurts, it hurts. With his head drooping, Creature disappeared in front of Li Feng again, ready to convey to Sirius Li Feng's intention to trade with the mysterious man and tell him the secret that the locket is a Horcrux. Not long after leaving Li Feng's room, Creature appeared again in Li Feng's room with the two in the shape of pin. Creature, who had just appeared, hid behind the two with a grieved expression. He clearly understood that he would leave the Black family with a high probability and followed behind Li Feng, who did not know him. The old acquaintance Sirius stood in front of Li Feng with a grim expression. Needless to say, looking at Sirius' expression, he knew that the other party understood Horcrux. That's fine, it saves me the trouble of explaining. Seeing that Sirius still did not take out his wand, Li Feng's mouth twitched slightly. If Sirius took out his wand and pointed at him, although Li Feng felt that he had the capital to fight against each other, there were still troubles. After all, what Sirius said, too. Dumbledore's people, but, do you dare to show up in front of me empty-handed? Do you think it's overwhelming, or is it because the one beside you, pointing at me with a magic wand from start to finish, can give you courage? But it's really uncomfortable to be pointed at with a magic wand. For safety's sake, Li Feng snapped his fingers to wrap the room into the mirror space. Once a fight broke out, the mirror space could be regarded as Li Feng's home court. Anyway, he could also give play to his home court advantage. Just as Li Feng was about to speak, he saw Creature standing in front of Sirius with a loyal expression, and said, Master, this magic imprisoned us in a different dimension. Before I could not teleport away because of being he is trapped in this space. Sirius pushed Creature away in front of him, and said with a nonchalant expression, what do you want? Li Feng shrugged and said, time converter and related information. Sirius was taken aback for a moment, and then sneered, I really didn't see that you still want to involve time magic. Save it. Although there are many time converters in the Ministry of Magic, they only know the production, but they don't know the working principle of time magic. Li Feng didn't refute Sirius' ridicule, but still smiled and said, and teach me magic. After thinking about it, Li Feng felt that he didn't know the magic of this world, and added, teach from the basics. Base. Did this one never go to a magic school? No wonder there is so little magic power. Lu Ping squinted his eyes, and while looking up and down Li Feng, he asked curiously, I can teach you basic magic, but you have to explain your origins. Li Feng looked at Lu Ping and asked, who are you? Remus John Lupin. Lupin said calmly, you can call me Lupin. Werewolf Lupin. By the way, the teaching level of this person is indeed good. But it seems that I have better conditions to deal with Lupin, should I change the conditions? After thinking for a while, Li Feng grinned and said, it's nice to meet you, Professor Lu Ping, but I want to change the conditions about what you taught me about magic. I will use the condition of expelling or suppressing the chimatoxin from your body, and you will teach me magic. In order to increase the persuasive power, Li Feng took out his wooden box and opened it while talking, and motioned Lu Ping to look at the fake angel feather in the box. Lupin, holding his wand, cast his eyes at the white feathers. He was a little confused as to why Li Feng called Roar himself a professor. At the same time, he didn't know why. When he saw the feathers, he felt that his soul was purified. Even if he became a werewolf, he would have reason. At the same time, there was some fear in his heart, as if he had an instinct to tell him to stay away from Feather. Definitely, becoming a werewolf and having reason is just Lupin's illusion. The role of the pseudo-angel feather is indeed to purify a creature with a twisted mind. As to whether the creature can withstand the purification energy, this is not within the scope of feathers. Werewolves in this world do not recognize the 6 relatives at the full moon. It can be seen that the mind is distorted. So for normal Lupin, feathers are not very useful, but at the full moon, they will still kill Lupin accidentally. Frowning, Lu Ping looked at Li Feng and asked, what is this? After closing the wooden box, Li Feng took out the Matchbox file-size magic book from his pocket, enlarged the magic book to normal size in front of everyone, and opened the pages of the book and said, "That's a pseudo-angel feather, a kind of a prop that specifically restrains mind-twisting creatures." When in Azkaban, the Dementor was locked into the mirror space and relied on this feather to subdue the opponent. If you want to expel the wolf poison, the feather can help you. While talking, Li Feng had found a spell to restrain the werewolves, handed the magic book to Lupin and pointed at the spell and said, "The effect of feathers is too strong, you may die if you don't, so I also have some spells to suppress wolf poison. As long as you find a way to portray it on your body, it will be difficult for you to become a werewolf at the full moon. Definitely, there are still weaknesses and other things. After all, this is to suppress but not to eliminate wolf poison." Lu Ping looked at the magic book and at Li Feng, shaking his head with a little regret on his face, and said, "I don't know where you know I am a werewolf, but I insist on using the locket to exchange it, otherwise I would rather endure wolf poison. Pain will not teach you magic." "Remus." Sirius looked at Lupin incredulously and said, "You are not." "The locket," Lupin interrupted Sirius with a smile, and said, "Compared to the locket, I want to kill the mysterious person to calm my soul, and after so many years, I have become accustomed to wolf poisoning. The pain it caused me." After that, Lu Ping looked towards Li Feng without a wave of gaze, and while looking at the mirrored space, he said, "Using the sealed space to make the Dementor know where to escape, plus restraining the Dementor's feathers, is a good strategy, but you should tell your origins and hand over the locket. Maybe we won't be able to leave this different space even if we defeat you, but how can I be reconciled if I don't try it? Is there anyone who is really not afraid of death? I just want to learn some magic, or it's so difficult." Li Feng looked at Lu Ping with a slight eyelid, trying to see the softness from the opponent's eyes, but he couldn't see anything except life and death. For a long time, Li Feng shrugged and said, "Use the locket to change the time converter and teach magic, and creature, there is no doubt about this, right?" Sirius and Lupin looked at each other. They nodded and glanced at Creature, who silently bowed their heads. Regarding Creature's change of ownership, they had no objection from the beginning. Human Horcrux is important. As for my origin, it is not impossible to tell you, but it is not that I despise your closed magical world. You must first understand the parallel universe to understand my origin." Seeing the two of them looking confused, Li Feng was thinking about, "It really is so," while enduring the urge to roll his eyes to explain to them what a parallel universe is. When watching Harry's movie, Feng Li only knew that necromancers either looked down on muggles or were afraid of muggles, but for this reason, it was a bit speechless to not even pay attention to some scientific theories. In this regard, Li Feng couldn't help but imagine that in the past hundreds of years in this world, humans have begun to move to space. This group of necromancers went out and took a look. Hey, what about muggles? Why are there necromancers left on the whole earth? For a long time, Lu Ping took the lead in digesting Li Feng's words and said in a contemptuous tone, "If you just say that you are not a person in this world, you can't stop it. Why are you talking about the universe?" At this time, Sirius also understood Li Feng's origins, and suddenly realized, "No wonder I don't know any of your magic. It turns out that you are an alien. You don't use magic wands to cast spells." Li Feng, alien, forget it, aliens are aliens. But, you actually know aliens. This is incredible. Sirius seemed to see Li Feng's surprise, and glanced at his mouth and said, "I was a master of refitting locomotives, and the necromancer, a locomotive, can't be manufactured. I can only steal it from muggles. It's indispensable to deal with muggles, so I'm not an old-school necromancer who eats the past." With some doubts, Sirius continued to ask, "Since you have never been to Earth, how did you know that I was locked up in Azkaban?" On the side, Lu Ping, who analyzed in his mind whether Li Feng's origins were true, replied to Li Feng with a little uncertainty, "Time." Sirius still didn't understand. He blinked at Lupin inexplicably, and asked, "What time?" Lu Ping glanced at Sirius angrily, and said, "The first thing Austin mentioned when he proposed to exchange the locket was the time converter. I think." Lu Ping looked at Li Feng and said, "I think Mr. Austin knows time spells, right?" Seeing Li Feng nodding and acknowledging that he knows time spells, Lupin said with a little envy in his eyes, "I guess you can see our past and future from the timeline, right? Why didn't I expect to explain this way?" It just so happens that I don't want to explain that you live in the movie plot. Li Feng grinned, nodded slightly and said, I can only see part of it. After all, my magic power is only so small. If I am strong enough, I might be able to see farther. Blow, anyway, bragging is not tax, Li Feng can't brag. Having said that, such an explanation is also good, at least they won't be asked inexplicably about things that have not been shown in the movie, such as when Harry's parents got married, and Li Feng will not be able to use much magic. Did not see it to explain. Aside, Sirius, who was muttering, timeline, seeing, words, seemed to recall something, his eyes were bloodshot, and he asked, you said that you knew the whereabouts of Peter Pettigrew, you didn't lie to me. Li Feng spread his hands and said, definitely. Where is he? Although Sirius sucked roar hard to calm himself down, the hands that clenched his fists could still tell how manic he was at the moment. Even Lu Ping, who was usually calmer, looked at Li Feng with a look of eagerness. Li Feng, I want. Sirius, who had a preliminary understanding of Li Feng, knew that the other party was going to make a deal again when he heard Li Feng's tone, but now he only wanted to kill the dwarf Peter, and didn't want to grind with Li Feng at all, so he interrupted Li Feng's words directly and said, make a deal. Li Feng, did I say anything just now? Why did you make the deal? Lu Ping silently looked at Sirius, who was dazzled by hatred, and pulled the opponent behind him to calm down, then turned his head and said, what do you want to exchange information with? Knowledge, Li Feng said with a smile. A lot of knowledge. You also know that I am not from the magic world, and I am curious about the magic of your world, so I want a lot of magic knowledge. Some simple or basic magic Li Feng can still be bought in bookstores, but some precious magic Li Feng has no place to buy, so what he wants is the magic book collected by the Black family. Sirius hesitated slightly, and said, books can be loaned to you for transcripts, but I want to keep the originals. These books are my gift to Harry. Li Feng, deal. When the agreement was reached, Li Feng said readily, little dwarf Peter is at Hogwarts. Impossible, Lupin retorted without thinking. If Peter was at Hogwarts, Dumbledore could not have been ignorant. Sirius also didn't believe Li Feng's words, and looked at Li Feng with unkind eyes, and said, your false lie is too bad, or do you think I have been tortured by a Dementor into a fool, and just making up a lie can deceive me? Li Feng sighed and said, have you forgotten Peter's anima, what's the horse? After thinking about it, Li Feng said that he really didn't remember what the ultimate shapeshifting technique in Harry's world was called, and said, it's your shapeshifting technique. Peter can become a field mouse. You think Dumbledore will notice that there is an extra one in the school? Vol. Animagus, Lupin said thoughtfully. Plus Peter is familiar with the secret passages in the school, maybe Dumbledore really can't find Peter's traces easily. Similarly, even if we find a reason to enter the school there is no trace of a rat, after all, the school is too big. Sirius didn't believe Li Feng's words. Nunu said, what is the difference between what you said and what you didn't say? I have to take advantage of the precious magic of the Black family. Unless you find out Peter Pettigrew, the transaction will be cancelled. It's not impossible for me to go to school to find the little dwarf, but now there is a basilisk haunting Hogwarts, is there a little less code to copy books? Li Feng scratched his eyebrows, and said, Little Dwarf is now Ron Weasley's pet, a pet mouse without a finger. It is said that Little Dwarf is a graduate of Gryffindor College. He just became a field mouse. Weasley's family has been hiding for 12 years, and this courage and perseverance is nowhere to be seen. Anyway, I can't turn myself into a mouse, so I think it's 12 years. Ron Weasley, lack of fingers. 0.12 years. Li Feng's introduction to Pettigrew made the two believe that Pettigrew was in school. At the same time, the two suddenly realized something. After a glance at each other, they said in unison, Harry is at school, he is in danger. The flustered Sirius bared his teeth and said, we will go to school right away. You protect Harry, and I will kill Peter. The calmer Lupin grabbed Sirius and looked at Li Feng and asked, did you see Peter hurt Harry? Afraid that Li Feng didn't know who Harry was, Lupin added, Harry has a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. The little boy is also a second-year student at Hogwarts. I definitely know Harry, after all, that guy is the protagonist. Li Feng shook his head slightly to signal that Harry was safe, and looked at Sirius and said, if you kill Peter like this, you should be charged with that. It is better to discuss how to capture the opponent alive and hand the opponent to the Ministry of Magic in exchange for yours, free. Lupin, who has the same idea, nodded and said, when you are free, in addition to wandering on the street, you can also buy a magic wand that is handy. It will also have a better guarantee for your safety in life. Li Feng scratched his head suspiciously. He remembered that everyone in the movie had a magic wand, even the wanted criminal Sirius had a magic wand next to him. How can you listen to Lupin's meaning? You can buy a magic wand if you want to. Excuse me, do you have any requirements for buying a wand? Definitely. Lu Ping was taken aback for a moment. Isn't this common sense that everyone knows? Then I realized that Li Feng is not a local person, and he did not know this common sense, so he casually explained to Li Feng, only people who are innocent can buy magic wands. Wanted criminals like Sirius can't buy magic wands. After some explanation, Li Feng nodded speechlessly to express his understanding. This is like even in a country where people can legally hold guns, there are still various strict regulations on the purchase of firearms. What can only be purchased for civilian firearms, not automatic rifles? Wait, the ultimate goal is to prevent criminals from randomly acquiring powerful weapons. The wand is not as simple as a civilian firearm for Necromancer. It is a big killer in the hands of Necromancer, so it is necessary to strictly control the wands sold. It's just that, Li Feng, who doesn't have any documents on his body, is very depressed. Although he is not a wanted criminal, he also does not have an ID card to prove that he is innocent. The most important thing is that he can't find him who is unfamiliar in life. Ways to make documents. Scratching his slightly head-itched head, Li Feng recalled what Sirius had said before, and said, Shanshan, you said before that you can get a certificate. Just help me get a certificate. Sirius grinned and said faintly, what do you use in exchange? This sounds familiar. Ma Dan, isn't this what I told you? Li Feng looked at Lu Ping speechlessly, and said, I use the spell to suppress wolf poison to exchange for a legal certificate and materials used to modify the car. After thinking about it, Li Feng felt that he was a bit disadvantaged. After all, there is no spell that can suppress wolf poison in this world. This is regarded as a scorpion shit poison only. He added, I still need a sum of Jin Zhilong. Lupin looked down at his patched clothes and whispered at the corners of his mouth, where do you see that I have the money to buy materials? Seeing Li Feng's embarrassed face, Sirius seemed as if he had jumped into a pool in a hot summer day. He told you to talk about transactions at every turn. But if Lupin has no money, it doesn't mean I have no money. Sirius, who owns the entire Black family property, waved his hand like a local tyrant and said while looking at the magic book in Li Feng's hand, when the transaction is concluded, the certificate will be delivered to you tomorrow morning. Li Feng said that he understood the other person's eyes in seconds, opened the magic book and handed it to Lupin, pointing to the spell on the book page, and said, there are actually many spells that can restrain wolf poisoning. If the spell I gave is not satisfied, you can find a suitable spell in the book to suppress wolf poison. After Lupin said thank you to Sirius, he took the magic book and walked to the desk. He picked up the quill on the table and transcribed the spell as he said, I will transcribe some spells first, and wait until Peter's matter is resolved. Come busy with the spell. Sirius on the side nodded, saying that it is indeed more important for the little dwarf now. After all, it is related to Harry's safety. Although the certificate will be given to you tomorrow, it will take some time to collect the materials for the modified car, and I will confirm that these spells are indeed effective. On the premise, after handing you the materials, as for Jin Zhilong, they are lying in the basement before, and you want to get them by yourself. Lu Ping finished copying the spell and motioned to Li Feng to open the gap in the mirror space. He was anxious to return to the Black House with Sirius, and when Dumbledore came back, he could discuss how to find Peter and get Sirius acquitted. In the room, Kreacher stood quietly behind Li Feng, while Li Feng, standing by the windowsill, watched the two leave the Broken Axe bar, anxiously opening the portal to the basement of the Black family. He wanted to take advantage of Sirius's return to the old house and evacuated Jin Zhilong from the basement. This was the cost of his purchase of magic materials, and did he not hear what Sirius said, if you want, you can get it yourself. No wonder I emptied. Kreacher crossed the portal with a look of confusion and surprise, and respectfully said to Li Feng, Master, what do you want to do when you return to the Black family? In the future, I will change my slogan to my boss. In other words, if someone hears you calling me master, it will cause unnecessary trouble. After that, Li Feng pointed to Jin Zhilong in the cubicle and said, add this to Jin Zhilong. Longdu moved into my room. Creature looked at Jin Zhilong, then at the portal behind him, nodded and said, good boss. While Creature was busy carrying Jin Zhilong, Li Feng walked to another compartment, looked at the books on the shelf with greedy eyes, and asked, Creature, are these books protected by magic? Creature turned his head and glanced at the books, and said, the books on the bookshelf are not protected by magic, but some books are originally purely dangerous, such as the first row of the Fantasy Adventures. Necromancer who does not have enough strength will fall into the illusion at a glance, spending a lifetime in books and eventually dying in the illusion. Only a strong enough necromancer can interpret the illusion in the book, and such books are everywhere on the shelves. Self-awareness. Li Feng doesn't think he has great strength. Once he was unlucky enough to be killed by books, he was funny. After thinking about it, Li Feng looked at Creature and said, what if you help me copy and translate these books? Can you deal with the magic in the book? Creature nodded, looked at the bookshelf and said, I can ignore some magic, but only some, and I also need a special quill for translation, otherwise I can't complete the task of translating so many books in a short time. Quote. Looking at the evacuated Jin Zhilong, Li Feng took out the magic book and handed it to Creature, saying, now help me translate some. We are leaving the basement when Sirius returns. Yes, boss. After speaking, Creature's old problem was committed again, and while walking to the bookshelf to pick up a magic book, he whispered, the boss. Inflicted on Jin Zhilong from the Black family. No, I want to get involved in the precious magic book. Li Feng scratched his eyebrows. He is still unable to treat Creature's problems, but that doesn't mean that he won't have a chance in the future. This is why he dares to ask Creature. Otherwise, a little elf who always scolds himself in his ears will cause Li Feng to be caught in his head. Only ask for it if you pass it. Ignoring Creature's muttering, Li Feng seemed to talk to himself and asked Creature, is there any way to improve his strength? Creature first glanced at Li Feng, whose mana was scarce, with contempt. Then he remembered that Li Feng is now his master, and said with his head down, boss, you can buy a potion of mana boosting. This potion can increase your total mana, but the potion is very scarce and precious, and it's hard to find. Or you can go to Hogwarts to practice for a period of time, but the problem is that the school has strict security, and you may not be able to get in with your strength. I can understand the magic boost potion. After all, there are many stories and movies and TV series about drinking medicine to increase the upper limit of magic power. Li Feng frowned and said, but what does it mean to go to Hogwarts to practice? What's special in Hogwarts is it? Under Creature's explanation, Li Feng slapped his forehead annoyedly. Reality is reality, and movies are movies. Although I have reminded myself that this is the real world, I still subconsciously forget many untold things in the movie. Just like Hogwarts, the movie only tells that every necromancer will go to school, but why do those families that have a rich family background and many resources still insist that their children go to Hogwarts to go to school? Is it not good to hire some private professors at home to provide elite education to children? It's not that I can't afford it. In fact, there is an environmental problem here. The environment here does not mean that the family is afraid of children being lonely and causes loneliness when they grow up, but the geographical environment of Hogwarts is so good. First of all, the school's feng shui is too good. The Forbidden Forest with a lower concentration is home to a large number of magical creatures, and there are as many magical plants on the ground as weeds on the roadside. As for Hogwarts, which was built in the area with the highest concentration of magic power, its magic concentration is not known how many times it exceeds the outside world. Originally this was nothing. After all, many well-established families have magic circles that gather magic power, which makes the magic power of the family more concentrated. The offspring have better magical abilities as soon as they are born, but you can't stand the creation of Hogwarts School. 4 people are too good. Not only did they choose a good school site, they also built a super magical array for the school. After thousands of years of operation of these magic circles, how strong is the magic in the school? Look at the stairs that like to move around in front of the Gryffindor dormitory. No one maintains the magic for these stairs. Where is the magic that they have moved for 100 years? It is not provided by the school. Even if the concentration is high, these magical powers converted by the magic circle are easy to be absorbed by others. Just like the school's freshman is an 11-year-old boy, how can the magic power be absorbed and transformed by the new students? The black magic defense professor's seat coveted by the mysterious people is the same. I don't want to stay in school to enjoy the happiness of soaring strength. Otherwise, curse a professor's seat, or a powerful curse that can last for decades. Does he panic when he is idle? It's not that he's not getting it or letting others get it. As for cursing the positions of other professors, look at the strength of the teachers in the school. Dumbledore will not say anything. Who is the boss of the 4 colleges? Mysterious people want to curse and have that ability. If it is a later mystery, it may be possible to curse, but the mysterious person before can't afford to provoke it. There is also the black magic defense professor that Dumbledore finds every year. How many necromancers are there in Britain? At the rate of changing a professor a year, coupled with the necromancer's fear of mysterious people, no one wants to be a professor of black magic defense in a few years. The reason why the school can find professors every year is not because the school environment is so good. As long as you stay in school, you can improve your own strength. Even if you can only stay for 1 year, it is good. If it is not for fear of mysterious people, I guess these cameo professors fought for the position of professor every year. For a long time, Li Feng was speechless and muttered to himself, "This is really a plan, no matter how good it is better to change. After talking for a long time, I have to go to school if I don't want to participate in the plot." Basilisk, Basilisk, when are you? Are you hung up? Creature, who was really immersed in transcribing books, suddenly put down the books in his hands, looked up to the ceiling, and said, "Boss, Sirius is back." Back. Li Feng waved his hand, put away the magic book and said, "Then leave and wait for the next time you buy all the props and come back to copy." In the early morning of the next day, Li Feng, who was still asleep, smelled the sweetness of butter bread, and Li Feng, who was rolling his eyelids after using a lot of energy, heard Creature say, "Boss, I don't know you like it yet. What to eat? I made bread and milk for you myself, and if you don't like it, I'll change it right away." Li Feng waved his hand. Regarding food, Li Feng, who is used to wandering, said that he is not picky about food, as long as he eats it. I haven't seen what he used to eat, compressed biscuits and canned food. After washing, Li Feng bit the bread and drank a glass of milk. Not to mention, Creature's craftsmanship is really good. The bread is soft and delicious. Thinking about how he will taste Creature's craftsmanship in the future, Li Feng said that he wouldn't be able to switch to Creature deficit. During the meal time, Li Feng turned his head to look at the full house of Jinjulong, frowning and said, "Creature, before going out, buy a suitcase with enough space for me. As for the cost, you take it yourself." When Li Feng was full of hiccups, Creature was holding a package and dragging a man's luggage. Come to Li Feng. "Boss, this is a package from Sirius." Li Feng took the package and opened it, and glanced at the ID inside the package. This is a temporary certificate issued by the Ministry of Magic. It tells that Li Feng was a necromancer who was traveling, but his hapless luggage was stolen. He applied for a temporary certificate at the Ministry of Magic for unnecessary trouble. As for the authenticity of the document with nose and eyes, Li Feng said he couldn't tell, but for Li Feng who wanted to buy magical items such as magic wands, this document was enough. After putting the ID with him, Li Feng looked at the suitcase in front of him speechlessly, saying it was a suitcase, but in Li Feng's eyes, what kind of suitcase was it? It was just a coffin standing upright. Look at the way the suitcase is opened. Especially after erecting, the box cover is opened like the coffin board. The only relief is that the space in the box is really large enough. It is estimated that after installing 2 baskets, you can come to a basketball game. After ordering Creature to load Jinjulong into the suitcase, Li Feng, who was in a good mood, whistled and pushed open the door. He had planned for a long time for today's purchase. Originally, Li Feng planned to replace all Jinjulong with materials today. If it weren't for a change in the plan, he now had to find an opportunity to sneak into the Hogwarts practice and postpone his return to the Marvel world. He really wanted to see what to buy. Led by the familiar Creature, Li Feng walked to the trash can in the back alley of Broken Axe Bar. With a glance, Creature knocked on the bricks on the trash can to open the entrance to Diagon Alley. Creature, do you know any store that can customize clothes? Li Feng, who was tired of going into battle in a vacuum every time he traversed, lowered his head and asked, including underwear and socks, as well as those that can be enchanted on clothes. Creature said without thinking about it. Tufan Garment Shop, where there are clothes requested by the boss, but enchanting is a slow job and takes time to complete. Li Feng nodded and motioned to Creature to lead the way. After a while, Li Feng, who walked into the clothing store, glanced at the clothes hanging on the wall, and said, "Boss, how long does it take for you to make custom-made enchanted clothes?" The boss glanced at Li Feng, and then at the house elves who followed Li Feng. He knew that none of the house elves could be able to stay with him and wait on him because he was short of money. The boss smiled. "Look at what magic you need." Li Feng, who has long thought about this, said, "Automatic cleaning and shapeshifting, but I want 4 sets, 1 set for spring, summer, autumn and winter. It includes socks and underwear." Automatic cleaning is easy to understand. That is, Li Feng is too lazy to wash clothes, and the ability to change clothes is also Li Feng, considering that he can melt into the local area faster after crossing. Otherwise you can ask Li Feng to make some suits, and then cross to the timeline. The medieval world. People will know that you are a different kind at first glance. The boss was a little confused. He still heard the request that underwear should be enchanted at the same time. What is the operation of enchanting socks as well? But who is the rich man? Since the client makes a request, he definitely tries his best to satisfy him. Anyway, he makes money without biting others. The boss thought for a while and estimated the required time and said, 3 days, but, if you add money, I will have finished the work before dark. As Li Feng emptied the basement of the Black family, he said that he is not short of money. As long as he gets the items he needs, he will not bring the little money that he will not bring with him. It is not worth mentioning. After the boss took some measurements, Li Feng paid the full fee before seeing the clothes. As soon as he walked out of the shop, Li Feng couldn't wait to beckon Creature to bring himself to buy a magic wand. Ollivander Wand Shop. The owner Ollivander is the best wand casting maker in the world. Many foreigners come to London only to buy a wand made by him instead of buying it locally. At the same time, all hogs he sold all the wands used by Watt's students. Ollivander left Li Feng the most impressive memory in the movie. This guy can only eat tofu regardless of the old one, but he can remember all the wands and holders he has sold. Li Feng walked to the entrance of the Ollivander store, and looked up at the peeled gold sign on the door, saying, "Ollivander, a well-made wand has been made since 382 BC. This is an old house with a historical charm." Shop. Walking into the store, the dust was Li Feng's first impression of the Ollivander store. At the same time, there were many wand boxes piled on the ceiling. Li Feng reckons that Ollivander usually relies on making magic wands for entertainment, otherwise there are so many magic wands. Inside the counter, a gray-haired Ollivander looked at the strange Li Feng with a pair of silver eyes, smiled and asked, "This stranger, welcome to the Ollivander Wand Shop. If you are here to buy a wand, please show your ID." Li Feng smiled and took out his identity certificate, which he did not know the authenticity of, and said, "Except for the suitcase that was too big to be stolen, my ID and wand were stolen by the Muggles. This is a temporary certificate that I handled at the Ministry of Magic. I hope this allows me to buy a handy wand from you." "It's the magic wand that chooses the owner." Ollivander took over the certificate and checked Li Feng's notion, and said, "So it's not that you feel that the wand won't take advantage of it, but that it will naturally make you feel that the wand chooses you. Satisfy." After a while, Ollivander handed back his credentials to Li Feng while looking at Li Feng up and down, and asked, "Mr. Austin, which hand are you used to using the magic wand?" Li Feng shook his right hand and said, "I am used to using this hand. By the way, I still need to maintain the wand items." A necromancer who knows how to cherish wands, Ollivander turned and walked to the cargo rack, picked up a measuring tape and said, "I'm glad that another wand is about to find its owner." Holding a measuring tape to measure Li Feng's arm length, height, and head circumference, Ollivander turned around and took out a magic wand box and handed it to Li Feng, saying, "Try it." Li Feng looked at the black and shiny wand. His first feeling was that this wand was too ugly, but who made Ollivander insist on choosing the owner of the wand? Li Feng could only pinch his nose and pick up the wand. Just before Li Feng tried to wave his wand, Ollivander grabbed the wand and whispered, "This is not right, please wait a moment." After speaking, Ollivander put down his wand, turned around and picked it up again. Li Feng felt a little inexplicable. Did you know that it wasn't suitable even if I didn't even try? Soon, Ollivander took the second wand and walked to Li Feng. Li Feng, who took the magic wand, didn't rush to wave it, but waited for Ollivander to say, inappropriate, or, appropriate. Ollivander looked at Li Feng speechlessly, and said, Mr. Austin, don't you try. Want me to try again now? Li Feng lowered his mouth slightly, and gently waved the magic wand in his hand to release the fire summoning technique. This time, Li Feng clearly felt his mana gathered at the top of the magic wand and released huge amounts of flame under the traction of the magic wand. Li Feng swears that at first he only wanted to summon a small flame to light a cigarette, but he really didn't want to summon a fire that was about to reach the ceiling. Li Feng put down his magic wand in a hurry, looked up at the slightly blackened ceiling, and said apologetically, sorry, I will compensate. Ollivander shook his head slightly, raised the magic wand in his hand to release, recover as before, to the ceiling, and said, it's okay, I think I know which magic wand you should use. After speaking, Ollivander drew a wand box from the corner of the counter and said, this wand was made with some accidents. I thought it would be difficult to find a master for him. While talking, Ollivander opened the box and handed a light gray magic wand with a dark gray pattern to Li Feng, and said, the stick wood is a sycamore wood, and the center of the stick is Yi cheese. Lanugo. Li Feng said that Wudong Mu knows himself, but he hasn't heard of Yechi or anything, but is it important to be a stick? As long as it is suitable for his own use, Li Feng doesn't mind even if the rod is the fly's leg hair. With a wave of his magic wand, Li Feng released a fire calling technique once, and saw a group of dove egg file-size orange-red flames floating steadily on the top of the magic wand and wandering along with Li Feng's command. Li Feng extinguished the flame with satisfaction, and said sincerely to Ollivander, thank you. With a slightly complicated expression, Ollivander took out the props for Li Feng to maintain his magic wand, and said, the wood will survive for a while after the tree is felled, just like grafting plants, only those active branches can be grafted successfully. The wood needed to make the wand must be alive, or the wand must be active, but your wand is different. It loses its vitality a second before I put the wand, it can be said that this is a dead one. Sycamore wood. The legend says that a phoenix is not a phoenix tree does not dwell. In the eyes of some people, the phoenix tree has the same meaning of rebirth from the fire, but you, the stick wood that originally represented life, now represents death, and... Ollivander paused, handed over the props for maintaining the wand to Li Feng, and continued, the creatures like Ichi are very unlucky in the eyes of some people. They think it will bring terrible disasters to those who see them. This kind of creature can only be seen by those who have witnessed death with their own eyes, but this does not prevent them from representing death when they reach adulthood, but the heart of your rod, it is the lanugo that represents a life coming into this world when the Ichi was born. The most important thing is that when I thought the magic wand failed to make, and I didn't give up on putting the core of the wand on the stick, the two were perfectly integrated. Listening to Ollivander's inexplicable remarks, Li Feng scratched his eyebrows and said, the stick wood that originally represented life now represents death, and the stick that originally represented death now represents life. Ollivander nodded, and said with some confusion, I'm very curious about what kind of person Mr. Austin is and why a wand of life and death would choose you. I also want to know why. Except for the feeling that it feels good, I can't see how the wand chooses its owner. Li Feng leaned slightly and said, maybe it's because I like to take risks and I'm used to life and death. Adventure. Li Feng's words opened Ollivander's memories like a key, and with some nostalgic thoughts, he said, when I was young, I also thought about taking risks, but later I thought it was more suitable for me to become a magic wand maker. Life, maybe after a few years, when I retire, I will travel everywhere, just travel, after all, I can't stand the adventure with my old bones. Li Feng motioned to creature to pay, and said, I think you are the most suitable wand maker, otherwise how can I get such a good wand? Such a good wand crafter is hard to find. Thank you for your compliment. Ollivander took over Jin Zhelong and smiled, it is also my duty to find the owner for the wand. Goodbye, Mr. Austin. Leaving the Ollivander wand shop, Li Feng ran to the Lihan bookstore non-stop, and poor creature followed Li Feng with a suitcase much taller than him. From a distance, it looks like a suitcase with huge amounts of walking around. Li Hen Bookstore mainly sells necromancer books of elementary level. Isn't Li Feng missing the elementary level books? Therefore, Li Feng, who entered the bookstore, didn't even look at the price list. He went straight for a while, and said proudly, "Give me a set of textbooks from Hogwarts age, including the textbooks from previous years." The clerk was a little stunned, glanced at Creature and the huge suitcase behind Li Feng, and said in an uncertain tone, "Sir, are you sure you include the books from previous years?" Li Feng nodded. In fact, Li Feng felt helpless. The ordinary textbooks are fine. Generally, one book is enough for Hogwarts for several years. But Hogwarts changes the Black Magic Defense class professor every year, which makes this textbook for Defense Black Magic not a system at all. It is always the necromancer who is the professor who designates the textbook. Like this year's Black Magic Defense professor at Hogwarts is Gydro Lockhart, the clerk took out a thick stack of Gydro Lockhart's own textbooks. Li Feng still has an impression of this Gildero Lockhart, who is good at memory magic. Although this professor is not really capable, he is very good at his mouth and memory magic. He can be said to be the first person to be able to play at Hogwarts the professor who is cheating on food and drink. It's just. Li Feng's eyes twitched and looked at books such as Break with the Female Ghost, Ma Dan, the Female Ghost. I'm not afraid of the devil, but also afraid of the female ghost. Why are you afraid of female ghosts? She has long straight and flowing hair, and her big cute eyes. Her figure is even more graceful, and the most important thing is that the female ghost's skin is very white. Otherwise, imagine a big fat man with messy hair, mung bean eyes, a height of less than 1 meter and a waist circumference of 200, and a female ghost with the skin color and black briquettes floating in front of you. You will never be scared. If you die, you will only be laughed to death. Is this a female ghost? Properly the unlucky ghost who was just struck by thunder. While complaining about the book written by Gydro Loha, Li Feng picked up the next one, and saw that it was swimming with ghouls, traveling on the same boat with vampires, and wandering with werewolves. Li Feng casually treated these to himself useless books or placed aside. Although his Jin Zhilong is similar to the wind blowing, it can't be wasted casually. What Ghoul Vampire, a book off Solomon's Key, allows Lao Tzu to deal with these creatures many ways to make the other person doubt life. After a long time, the clerk felt that he was almost tired and got down before he moved all the books into Li Feng's suitcase. Li Feng glanced at Jin Zhilong in the suitcase, waved to Creature and said, "Remember to remind me to leave some living expenses, and the rest will be used to buy some materials." Like the crucible for boiling potions, the luxurious tents with no traces, the fragmentary magic props such as the special feather pen for translation, Li Feng only chooses the expensive ones and not the right ones. These props are related to the subtle manipulation of Lupin's subsequent teaching of magic. Li Feng dare not carelessly. As for the tent, Li Feng definitely used it after sneaking into Hogwarts through the secret path. After that, Li Feng bought some medicines and medicinal materials on a large scale. If it weren't for Jin Zhilong's bottoming out, Li Feng was going to empty all the materials in the medicinal store. In the end, Li Feng walked into the EWL Owl store, under the leadership of Creature. Originally, the owl was not on Li Feng's shopping list, but he couldn't stand Li Feng and stayed in this world for as long as possible in order to improve his strength. Considering that he was planning to hide in Hogwarts, he had to learn magic from Lupin during the day, and the magical world had no means of communication such as telephones. Li Feng had to buy an owl as a correspondent. As for why Hogwarts, who is staying forbidden from apparition, suddenly appeared in front of Lupin, Li Feng didn't bother to think about it. Knowing that Kamatage's portal could be opened across planes, Li Feng would still be afraid that he would not be able to get out of Hogwarts. Here. The only trouble is that Li Feng hasn't thought of where to hide. The original Basilisk's den is pretty good, the place is wide and hidden, but the basilisk is not yet known whether it has been killed. Li Feng can only exclude the Basilisk's den, waiting for Harry to settle down at the Basilisk's den after the summer vacation. Walking into the dark owl shop, Li Feng knows that the dim light in the shop is to match the owl's daily life habits, but the dark one can't see what the owl looks like. Is it necessary to be so dark? Smelling the scent of bird droppings around, Li Feng hurriedly bought an owl with big-eared bat blood and gray-yellow feathers, clutching his nose and mouth, and then turned and left the shop. Li Feng, who walked out of the shop and took a deep breath of roar, feeling the fresh air, curiously looked at the owl he bought, and asked Kreacher on the side, Kreacher, bats and owls are not the same species, how did they crossbreed this one? Owls. Kreacher replied silently. Boss, just use enchanting potions for owls. Ordinary owls don't have the ability to send letters. Only after using enchanting potions, they can become messengers. Looking at the few Jin Zhilong left in the suitcase, Li Feng looked at the various magic materials piled up in the suitcase with satisfaction. Jin Zhilong brought back to the Marvel world is just a material, so it is not as cost-effective to replace it with materials. I'm saying that Jin Zhilong was originally not mine, so it feels really, so refreshing. After thinking about not forgetting what to buy, Li Feng signaled Kreacher to go back to the Broken Axe bar, while he was holding a few Jin Zhilong and preparing to stroll down Diagon Alley. If Li Feng has enough strength, then it would be nice to stroll around Knockdown Alley to find some black magic items, but now, Li Feng, who has just left the rookie ranks, said that he should look at the flying scanner to satisfy his curiosity. As for buying the flying broom, Li Feng thinks it's forgotten, because it is unnecessary and cost-effective. He really has no interest in riding the broom in the radar-ravaged world. What should I do if he is beaten down by someone? And they fly in the sky without wearing a thick anti-freeze suit, and be careful to be inhumane by being frozen. Approaching the evening, Li Feng tasted the food cooked with magic in Diagon Alley, tasted a few mouthfuls with a look of disgust, then got up and went back to the Broke Cauldron bar. Kreacher made delicious. As soon as Li Feng returned to the room, Kreacher took out 4 sets of brand new clothes eagerly and said, Boss, the owner of the Tufan garment store has already sent your customized clothes. Do you want to try them on? Definitely, but before trying it on, Li Feng said as he took off his jacket, I wandered Diagon Alley for a day, and I was so sweaty. Kreacher, prepare some hot water for me and I want to take a bath. Kreacher, who prepared hot water and a bathtub after he was busy, immediately turned into a scrubber after Li Feng comfortably soaked in the tub, rubbing Li Feng up and down cleanly. After a long time, Li Feng, who had been washed for nothing, put on a fitted suit and had a stinky meal in front of the mirror. Aside, Kreacher looked up at Li Feng and asked curiously, Boss, why do you want to buy 4 sets of clothes? Isn't it enough to buy 2 sets of clothes with thermostat magic? Li Feng's eyes jumped slightly and looked down at Kreacher. I forgot. You can't say it earlier. Saving money for 2 sets of clothes, and allowing me to buy more medicinal materials. In the evening, while Li Feng was still soaking in the tub, Dumbledore returned from Azkaban to Black House. After Dumbledore rang the doorbell, Lupin opened the door, turned sideways to open the passage to signal Dumbledore to enter the old house, and asked, Professor, how did you check? Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, Austin's method of controlling the Dementor is more troublesome than I thought. I only know that this is a black magic, and the Dementor is not Austin's pet. It's a slave whose life and death are controlled by Austin. As for cracking the spell, I don't have any ideas yet. Maybe I need to talk to some old friends or ask Austin directly. While talking to Dumbledore in the restaurant, he saw Sirius with a gloomy expression at the table, ignoring the scorched food on the table and pouring wine into his mouth, blinking and asking Lupin next to him, what's wrong with him? Lupin sighed and said, in a bad mood, plus, when Kreacher was still in the old house, we didn't feel his importance, but after losing Kreacher, we discovered that we even the most basic I can't cook food well, maybe I should find time to learn how to cook. Kreacher. Dumbledore fiddled with the unknown food on the table. He was hungry and instantly put his appetite behind him, and said, food can make people happy. I like to taste some pudding when I am in a bad mood. What happened to that house elf? Sirius freed him. The slightly drunk Sirius looked at Dumbledore with a wry smile and said, I gave him away. Dumbledore was stunned, but he knew what a house elf represented to these long-established families. It can be said that the absence of house elf represented the complete loneliness of the Black family. Dumbledore pulled out a chair and asked curiously, it seems that many things happened during the time I was away. Lupin leaned back against the wall, and said bitterly, a lot, too many you can't imagine. We not only know that the locket taken by Austin is one of the mysterious man's Horcruxes, but also that the dwarf star Peter has changed. Adult pets are hiding in Hogwarts. With a surprised expression, Dumbledore motioned to Lupin to narrate the matter in detail. After listening to Lupin's account, Dumbledore, who had been thinking about it for a long time, asked, can you be sure that Austin is not from this world? Lupin shook his head and said, "It is because we don't know the truth or not. That's why I circulated the portrait of Austin in the circle of friends, but no one has said to know Austin or even claimed to have seen him. No one from Ding. We guess Austin is telling the truth, and..." Lupin glanced at the slightly ruined Sirius, and said, "We learned that after the dwarf descended, Sirius deliberately investigated the Weasley's voles with Sirius. Although we did not see the shadow of the voles, we also learned that the voles were alive. After 12 years, this is very abnormal. It is impossible for a common vole to live for more than 12 years even with a potion, and it is still a vole that just lacks a finger." On the side, Sirius took a sip of wine and said, "If Lupin hadn't stopped me desperately, I would really like to sneak into the school and kill Dwarf Star now." Dumbledore smiled and looked at Lupin and said, "You did a good job. As far as I know, Mr. Ron Weasley does have a vole as a pet, but I never suspected that there was a problem with that vole, the most important thing." Ron was still in the same bedroom as Harry. Hearing Peter and Harry live in the same dormitory, Sirius immediately thought that Harry was in danger and stood up with horror on his face and said, "No, I'm going to Hogwarts now." Lupin walked quickly to Sirius with a flustered look, pushed Sirius back on the chair vigorously, and said, "Calm down, you need to be calm, don't you understand what the professor means? Ron and Harry are in the same college. Even in the same bedroom for more than a year. Peter obviously knew Harry's existence, but he never heard Harry, so we can't rule out that it was the mysterious man who let the Dwarf Star watch Harry until the mysterious man regained his strength and attacked Harry, but before that, Harry was safe." Seeing Sirius struggling fiercely and still wanting to go to Hogwarts to kill Pettigrew, Lupin almost roared and said, "But once your figure appears in the school, it's different, except for attracting the attention of the Ministry of Magic and making it unnecessary. In addition to the troubles, it will also alarm the originally peaceful dwarf. You are telling him that you escaped from Azkaban and killed him. Perhaps your appearance will force the dwarf to hurt Harry in a hurry." Quote. Lupin's roar finally brought Sirius back to his senses, and at the same time, he understood that he, who was carrying the identity of a wanted criminal, could not easily appear in front of the public. Otherwise, it would not be a question of whether he could kill Dwarf for revenge, but whether Harry had a safe life. Question: Harry is the only child of Sirius' good friend James, and he doesn't want to extinct the Potter family because of his impulse. When Lupin let go of his big hand on his shoulder, Sirius picked up the wine bottle on the table and took a few sips, hoping to extinguish the anxiety in his heart, or simply get drunk, so that his brain could have after a short rest. It's a pity that the alcohol content of these wines is obviously not up to Sirius's wishes. With some helplessness and entanglement, Sirius put down the bottle, looked at Dumbledore and said, "Professor, what should I do? At the moment we don't understand anything. Only doing nothing can guarantee Harry's safety." After finishing speaking, Dumbledore looked at Lupin and said, "Can you arrange a meeting with Mr. Austin for me? Since he claiming to be able to see many things we don't understand through time, I think I can ask him for many of my doubts, such as how many Horcruxes of mysterious people are, and where are they hidden." "This is not a good idea," Lupin said, rubbing his eyebrows. "Austin likes trading. You want to know the answer from his mouth. You'd better bring enough ginge along." And this, Sirius stood up and gave Dumbledore the time converter and a piece of information in his pocket, and said, "I stole this from the Ministry of Magic today." Austin pointed out to exchange the locket. "You can only use time converters and materials, and let Lupin teach Austin magic." Lupin spread his hands and said, "I don't care, I just spend some time, and Austin asks to teach the basics. This is not difficult for me. I only worry about whether stealing the time converter will cause the Ministry of Magic attention. I don't think the Ministry of Magic has time to take care of the thief right now," Dumbledore said with a clearly worried expression on his face, touching his white beard that grew to his waist subconsciously. "They have learned of Hogwarts. A student was attacked by a monster in Zine, and he is now busy negotiating with the school manager and shutting down Hogwarts when necessary to prevent another student being attacked." Lupin touched his chin and said thoughtfully, "Maybe we can ask Austin. See if he knows the true identity of the monster. As long as we know the specific origin of the monster, we can always think of a solution. Isn't it?" "Good idea," Dumbledore said with a smile. "I can't wait to see this pseudo-prophet. Lupin, please get in touch with him as soon as possible." Lupin nodded, picked up a side of pen and paper, and walked out of the old house with the letter paper and said to Dumbledore and the two of them, "I'm using the locket tonight as an excuse to ask him to come to the old house to trade. I hope he came to our world with kindness, otherwise." "No." Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, "If Austin comes to our world only with the purpose of learning, I don't mind teaching him for a while and checking his character by the way." Then, Dumbledore was playful. Blinking an eye, faintly said, "If he is evil, Merlin will forgive my decision. After all, I am an elderly man and I really don't have the energy to deal with the next mysterious person." Although Dumbledore's words did not contain killing intent, Lupin already knew that Dumbledore, who was a white necromancer and opposed to killing, sometimes used killing methods as well. When Li Feng was still complaining about Kreacher about the clothes, he saw an owl with a certain sign in doubt, stopped outside the window of his room with a letter in his mouth, and politely tapped the window with his mouth. Kreacher now knows that Li Feng is not a person in this world. It is estimated that Li Feng does not know what the logo on the owl represents, and whispered, "Boss, the logo on the owl is from the post office. It is for you." Li Feng scratched his eyebrows, slightly surprised, and guessed, "I know Sirius and Lupin in this world. Did they get the time converter and data so quickly? The efficiency is fast enough." Kreacher opened the window, and while receiving the letter, he fed some food scraps to the owl. Perhaps the owl at the post office was well trained. He just glanced at the food in Kreacher's hand and flew his wings away from the broken cauldron bar. However, the owl's refusal of food also convinced Kreacher. "The boss, it is indeed an owl raised by the post office. Only their owls will refuse to feed from people other than the breeder." He glanced at the envelope that said Lupin. Kreacher handed the letter to Li Feng and said, "Boss, your guess is correct. This is a letter from Lupin the Dirty Werewolf." Li Feng, who took the letter, felt that it was amazing to get used to this thing. In just one day, he felt that he had been a little used to Kreacher who was smashing his mouth all day. Li Feng ignored Kreacher, who was still cursing Lupin in a low voice, opened the letter and only glanced at it and handed it to Kreacher with a helpless expression. "Maiden, forgot that I am not familiar with English writing. I roughly understand the content of the letter and the time converter, but I don't understand the specifics. Kreacher, please translate." With contempt in his eyes, Kreacher glanced at Li Feng vaguely, still muttering words such as, "illiterate," in his mouth. After the meeting, Kreacher respectfully said, "Boss, Mr. Lupin invites you to the old black house tonight. The letter says that they have obtained the time converter and related materials. Considering that you need a lot of time to learn magic, I want to cooperate with you. You talk about trading the locket first." After speaking, Kreacher looked at Li Feng with expectant eyes, and said in a hesitation, "Boss, when shall we return to Black House?" "Back." Li Feng frowned. Although he knows the loyalty of the house elves and Kreacher's mind is a bit old-fashioned, but I am still loyal to me now. What does it mean to go back to Black's old house? People are unhappy. Li Feng squatted in front of Kreacher, and said in a stern tone, "Kreacher, Sirius has transferred you to me, so you are no longer the elves of the Black family, but my house elves, you understand?" Kreacher lowered his head and nodded with a hint of grievance and horror, "Yes, boss." Definitely, Li Feng also knew that there were some things in a hurry. At least it was difficult for Kreacher to completely forget the Black family before he cured Kreacher's neurosis, so Li Feng just gave a warning and didn't say much. "Kreacher, take the locket," Li Feng said as he opened the portal to Black's old house. "We will go and complete the transaction now." When Li Feng crossed the portal and came to Black's old house, his face suddenly became a little embarrassed when he saw the people who greeted him. Li Feng looked at Sirius with a big drink, and then at Dumbledore who looked at the portal with a smile. Li Feng couldn't help but vomit. "When I was locked in the basement before, I thought Lupin was the reinforcement you called. Now it seems that Dumbledore is the reinforcement you called." Or after Sirius knew that I was not a member of this world, he specifically notified Dumbledore and asked this big man to check my details. "Do you count as anti-aircraft guns for mosquitoes?" As soon as I walked out of the novice village, I had to face the big boss Lao Dang. It will take me a long time to explain the fact that someone ingests the god's telekinesis. Dumbledore seemed to see that Li Feng was a little nervous when facing himself, and said with a smile, "It looks like you know me, but please allow me to introduce myself. I am a first-class Merlin Medal winner, Abuna Dumbledore. Nice to meet you, Mr. Austin. By the way, your clothes are beautiful." Me too, I'm glad to meet you. Li Feng reached out and shook hands with Dumbledore, looked down at the clothes that changed into a casual suit and said, I like this suit too, but is your self-introduction too good? Are you humble? As far as I know, your title is more than just a Merlin Medal winner. Dumbledore raised his eyebrows, and while observing Li Feng's mana carefully, he put on a proud expression on his face and said, Really, has my name passed to multi-universe? Sure enough, old comrade Dang already knew that I was not from this world, and Dumbledore knew multi-universe. Li Feng glanced at Lupin and Sirius, turned his head and said to Dumbledore, How do you know about multi-universe? It seems that your magical world is a relatively closed world. Dumbledore smiled mysteriously. His friend and elder Nicole LeMay said that death is just the beginning of another adventure, and Dumbledore doesn't know Muggle necromancer at all, so he started from here many facts were guessed in the words. It's just that Dumbledore didn't explain anything to Li Feng. Sometimes maintaining a sense of mystery is also an invisible deterrent. Dumbledore took out the time converter and a pile of materials and put them in front of Li Feng, and said, Can you tell me about Horcrux and Pettigrew? There is nothing to say about the little dwarf. Li Feng just said what he had said to Lupin before, but Li Feng was a little blinded about the Horcrux. He only remembered the general plot of the movie, and forgot all the details, like a Horcrux. He only remembered that it was related to Voldemort's resurrection, and he didn't remember the specific point. After thinking about it, Li Feng said honestly, I don't even know what Horcrux is. I only know that Voldemort has made 7 of them. One of them is a locket. After recalling the plot, Li Feng, who had other plans, signaled Creature to pass the locket to Dumbledore, adding, I didn't know this was a Horcrux until I saw the locket. Can you see that this is a Horcrux? Dumbledore turned the locket with his wand in a little surprise, and said, If you hadn't told me that this was a Horcrux, I wouldn't pay attention if I was careless. This ordinary-looking locket, I am curious, how do you see it? Hooked. Li Feng took out his own Matchbox file-size magic book and restored to its original appearance in Dumbledore's very interested eyes. Li Feng turned the magic book to the page that introduced spiritual spells, indicating that Dumbledore could check the principles of the magic at will, including Li Feng's improved eye, and said, It's up to this. Dumbledore glanced at Li Feng. He was curious, because Lupin and Sirius had previously said that Li Feng was a stingy master and liked trading everything, but now, why did it suddenly become magnificent, so that even this unique spell could be viewed at will? But Dumbledore was even more curious about what kind of magic could make people see the Horcrux at a glance, so any doubts could only be held in his heart. For a long time, Dumbledore, who closed his eyes and pondered after watching the spirit technique, suddenly opened his eyes and said with interest, It is very interesting magic. The ability of Theai of Dharma can not only see through the Horcrux, as long as the soul does not happen. Change, all external changes can be seen through the Dharma eye, such as the use of the compound decoction, that can change the appearance of people in the face, and when an animal is transformed into an animal using animagus, the Dharma eye can see the other person. The truth, face. After speaking, Dumbledore said thoughtfully, Mr. Austen, you deliberately showed me the magic of Theai of Dharma. As long as I learn Theai of Dharma, I can naturally see at a glance whether Ron's pet is Peter, the dwarf, right? Li Feng squeezed his nose awkwardly, nodded slightly and said, Yes. On the side, seeing Li Feng nodding his head without shame, Lu Ping said with contempt, The idea is good, then this time, Mr. Austen, what are you going to do with the spell? Li Feng didn't care about Lu Ping's contempt. As long as he could improve his strength and knowledge storage, how could he be despised, and he would neither be pregnant nor lose a piece of meat. And how can the opportunity to exchange benefits from the well-known Dumbledore be discarded at will? Li Feng shrugged and said, I want to enter Hogwarts practice. If Dumbledore can agree to this condition, Li Feng feels that his previous plan to sneak into the school can be invalidated, and he can enter the school with integrity. Why should he enter the school carefully? On the one hand, he was trembling to improve his strength, on the other hand, he appeared directly at the Hogwarts table to eat and drink, and by the way, he could also attend the magic lesson. How cool. Pity. Dumbledore was stunned. He understood that Li Feng wanted to use the school environment to quickly improve his strength, but let alone that he is not the principal now. Even if he is still the principal, he can't let people in and out of Hogwarts freely. He is the principal. But there is still the board of directors pressed by him, and Hogwarts is not the place where he is just what he says. I'm afraid I can't agree to your request. Dumbledore looked at the thick magic book and shook his head. But we can change to a more reasonable condition. You teach me magic, and I teach you magic, how about? Dumbledore, who plays shapeshifting like a fire and innocent, teaches himself. Li Feng only felt that this happiness came suddenly. Let alone how Lupin's strength compares to Dumbledore. He said that Dumbledore has been a professor for a lifetime, and his teaching experience alone is a few blocks away from Lupin, a fool would refuse. With a little embarrassment, Li Feng, who nodded his head like a chicken suckling rice, asked, if I sneak into Hogwarts, can you treat it as if you haven't seen it? Lupin on the side just wanted to refuse. Dumbledore smiled and nodded and said, yes, but I need you to do something for me. Li Feng asked with a confused look, what's the matter? Dumbledore, watch Peter the Dwarf. When Li Feng heard Dumbledore's request, he was a little flabbergasted. He was a little confused. He could say that the people who can monitor the petty dwarfs can be said to have a lot of people at Hogwarts, just like the few trusted by Dumbledore. The heads of the colleges and universities all have special skills. Minerva McGonagall may be able to say that she is powerful, but she has no experience in monitoring people. But what about Professor Severus Snape, who didn't know if it was facial paralysis or was born with a gloomy face? This guy is not only extraordinary, but also relies on his excellent acting skills to mix into the small group of mysterious people. It is not like playing Severus Snape to monitor Peter. Could it be that Dumbledore was worried that Professor Snape knew that his beloved Lily Potter was actually killed by Pettigrew, afraid that Snape could not help but shoot Pettigrew to death? Witness who delayed Sirius's charge. After all, Snape and Sirius couldn't deal with each other, and he was also proficient in making various potions. It was quite easy to kill people without knowing it. Speaking of this, Li Feng had to give a thumbs up to Snape's view of love, looked at others, and watched his beloved woman become another's wife and give birth to a baby, especially this other, or someone he hates. After so many years, let's not say that Snape still didn't put Ms. Lily Potter down. It's enough to see Harry Potter wandering around him all day long, especially for the magical world. The future has to protect him. Feelings for Snape. Li Feng expressed his admiration, but he believed that he would never be able to do it. If Li Feng were Snape, once Lily chose to leave and throw into the arms of his opponent, Li Feng would only choose to forget Lily. I really felt puzzled. It was great to wait for Harry's father to belch and quietly dig out the grave and whip the corpse. As for protecting each other's children, why, it's not his own kind. It's good to be able to treat it with a normal heart. Harry dared to bark his teeth. Father and son still don't understand. A violent beating is inevitable. Li Feng frowned and thought about it. Although he was consciously confident of sneaking into Hogwarts, he must hide in hiding after entering the school because of strength problems. There is no strength to face a few professors. At that time, a professor turned him into a uniform and sent him to the Ministry of Magic for trial, and he was sentenced to squatting in Azkaban. After all, the Dementors are his servants. Azkaban can be said to be in Li Feng's domain, and he is afraid of birds. But before the Ministry of Magic threw Li Feng into the Azkaban, it would be bad to come and take a few spells to ingest the gods' telekinesis or seal memories. In case Li Feng forgets to return to the Marvel world, he will be in the world of Harry Potter all his life. Old and dead. Why? Before figuring out the reason, Li Feng didn't want to risk himself easily. You can see my strength. Even if the spells I master are different from yours, you will be a little rushed after confronting me for the first time. But what happens next? Once you are familiar with my spells, I have not been hanged by you, so the conditions for monitoring the dwarfs are too dangerous for me to come. Pointing to the shape of his mouth, Li Feng said quietly, listen clearly, I tell you straightforwardly, I don't have any ambitious goals or ideals to change the world. I am just greedy for life and fear of death, and possess extraordinary powers. Ordinary people. Finally, Li Feng looked at Dumbledore and said seriously, aren't you the principal of Hogwarts? It's not enough to monitor the little dwarf yourself, not to mention the fake mouse of little dwarf. Even if the mouse becomes a sperm, it will punch holes. It's impossible to slip away from you. Faced with Li Feng, who dared to say that he was greedy and afraid of death, Lupin glanced at the Horcrux on the dining table with his eyes twitching, and silently recalled that Li Feng said that he would use a locket to trade with a mysterious person, before you wears your courage. Or is it just to scare me into playing? Dumbledore said with a smile, the problem is that I can't go back to Hogwarts now. Li Feng frowned and scratched his head, feeling like Dumbledore was telling a joke. Even if you are always busy, the time for writing the letter can still be squeezed out. It's great to write a letter back to school and let Snape take care of dwarfs' affairs. At the same time, let Minerva McGonagall supervise Snape. Li Feng stretched out his hand and motioned to Dumbledore to explain what is meant by unable to return to Hogwarts. Dumbledore, it looks like you haven't seen what happened in the school recently. See, did I install surveillance equipment at Hogwarts? What did I see, or did Dumbledore know something? Li Feng glanced at Lupin in wonder. It's not this guy who told Dumbledore that I can see everything through time. Li Feng spread out his hands silently and said, I checked the timeline all day when I was full. I'm talking about it. Once people know what will happen in the future, what fun is there in life? What surprises are there? You can't stir your heartstrings anymore. Perhaps you are right. Dumbledore thought for a while, and felt that Li Feng's words made some sense. If someone knew from the beginning what kind of person he would become in the future, perhaps the effort and motivation to work now would diminish. For the most part, this is like expecting a sumptuous dinner at home after work every day. Once you know what to eat for dinner, will you still have that kind of anticipation? I know that 1 day and 2 days are fine, but every day I know that what I eat for dinner is different. After all, Li Feng doesn't look like an old man, he likes the ordinary days like water. Touching his gray beard, Dumbledore told Li Feng what had happened in the school, looked at Li Feng expectantly, and asked, do you know what the monster in the secret room is? Li Feng, who had no impression of the details of the movie before, heard Dumbledore say this, vaguely recalled something. I said how Hagrid squatted in a madcabin. This kid was also unlucky. He was framed 50 years ago. What a monster that released the secret room, but was forced to drop out of school under Dumbledore's maintenance and became a school forest guard. Now the students in the school are being attacked by monsters in the secret room again, causing the old things to be brought up again. Hagrid, the Black Potter, is directly detained in Azkaban. And the suspension of Dumbledore. Li Feng nodded slightly and said, I know what it is. Before Li Feng could say, Basilisk, Dumbledore interrupted, did you see any students who died because of monsters? Seeing Li Feng stunned and shook his head denying that someone had died, Dumbledore breathed a sigh of relief and said, if you tell the true identity of the monster, what do I need to do? So, are you interrupting me just to prevent my lion from opening his mouth? Li Feng thought for a while and said, if possible, can the school open the restricted book area of the library to me? I want to copy some magic. I need to think about it. Dumbledore handed the time converter and information to Li Feng, and signaled the end of the transaction, and you can get out. Li Feng, who understood Dumbledore's consciousness, chuckled, got up and looked at Lupin, and asked, when will I teach me magic? Tomorrow night, Dumbledore smiled. Tonight will be a busy night. Hearing that it was Dumbledore who answered him, Li Feng scratched his eyebrows. How can you listen to Dumbledore's tone and teach the basics of magic? Lupin looked at Dumbledore with a puzzled look on the side. Professor. Dumbledore, who stretched out his hand to signal that Lupin would ask again, got up and walked in front of Li Feng, and said, yes, I will teach you magic for a period of time. As for the dwarf, you can monitor it, even if you feel it is dangerous. Li Feng was a little fascinated by Dumbledore's behavior. He didn't understand. After he sneaked into Hogwarts, did Dumbledore think he hadn't seen him, or would he pick him out? Also, in Dumbledore's words, he seemed to agree with him using spiritual spells in exchange for teaching himself magic. With a little uncertainty, Li Feng patted the magic book in his pocket, and asked ambiguously, when will you learn the spells related to the spirit body? If Dumbledore said nothing to learn, there was nothing to say, and the transaction failed. If Dumbledore explained the specific time when he learned spiritual spells, the transaction would naturally succeed. Tomorrow night, I teach you magic and you also teach me magic, Dumbledore blinked and said curiously, now let me see your portal spells that are different from our world. With a confused face, Li Feng nodded slightly, and after saying goodbye to a few people, he reached out to open the portal, and said to Creature who looked nostalgic, Creature, we're leaving. When the portal disappeared, Lupin couldn't wait to ask, "Professor?" Dumbledore stretched out his hand to signal Lupin to keep quiet, while squinting to perceive the magical fluctuation caused by the portal. For a long time, Dumbledore, who had gained a little bit, sat back in his seat with satisfaction and said, "Lupin, I know what you want to ask." Actually, Li Feng's answer has already told us a lot. Lupin, stunned, squinted his eyes and reminisced for a while and said, "Austin said that no one was killed by a monster, and asking you if you can enter Hogwarts practice, it shows a lot of problems, such as the monster will eventually killed or driven away, and you will definitely return to school." After thinking for a while, Lupin continued, "When he talked about the monster in the secret room, there was no expression of fear or other expressions on his face. I only saw his troublesome consciousness. Considering Austin's strength, maybe the monster's strength is not ours before. Think so strong. Not only that, but I can also hear and see more things, but there is no evidence to prove it, such as calling Roar a professor, and I perceive the magic of darkness against the F.A." Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, "Also consider his methods of restraining monsters, just as he can restrain werewolves and dementors. Perhaps the monsters will only become weak in front of him. But there is one thing you were right." Dumbledore took out a pen and paper to write to Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape in the school, said, "Austin is indeed not as strong as I thought. After all, I didn't have the courage to break into Hogwarts, I was just wondering how he sneaked into the school, relying on his portal." On the side, Sirius, who hadn't spoken for a long time, looked at Lupin, and said quietly, "Since Austin can see my past, maybe he can also see Lupin's past, such as the passage of Thesamasher Willow. Maybe, coupled with his portal, maybe he can really learn magic with you while ignoring Hogwarts defenses." Leaving Black's old house and returning to the Broken Cauldron bar, Li Feng leaned against the window with a cup of tea, looked up at the crescent moon hanging in the sky, thinking in his heart, "I will start learning the magic of this world tomorrow night." There was no time to go to Hogwarts for a few days at night, and although it was free during the day, it was too difficult to sneak into Hogwarts. "So I'd better go to Hogwarts to explore the way tonight. If I'm lucky enough to find the House of Request, even if I don't find it, I have to find the entrance to some secret rooms, such as the crawling passage of the Basilisk, as long as after finding the passage, I can hide in Hogwarts underground practice magic. As long as I use a more concealed portal when I enter and exit, it is estimated that no one will find me." After thinking about it for a long time, Li Feng, who was sure to act tonight, turned his head and asked, "Creature, do you know the Screaming Shack?" Creature thought for a while and asked, "Boss, are you asking about the haunted house in the Hogsmeade village of Necromancer?" "I know where it is." "Very well, I still worry about where and how Hogsmeade is. Now that Creature knows the Screaming Shed, it's fine to show up directly in the shed." "Doesn't the shed mean a simple house? But how do I watch the Screaming Sheds in the movie or in the shape of villas? Is there any misunderstanding in it? The director thinks that the funds are a bit too much and the sheds are built into villas for fun, or the translators are doing it, as the villa translated as a shed. It will never be a British villa with an alias, it's called a stilt house. I read less, but it's not good to deceive." Hearing Creature calling Roar's Screaming Shed a haunted house, Li Feng couldn't help but curl his mouth slightly and said, "It's that one, but it's not a haunted house, but a secret path to Hogwarts Road." Creature blinked and looked at Li Feng curiously, his eyes full of inquiries, an expression that wanted to ask but was afraid of Li Feng's scolding. Li Feng thought for a while. He didn't need Creature's help to explore the road this time, but he might need Creature's help to get in and out of Hogwarts. Let him know about the Screaming Shack, at least so that Creature doesn't have to be afraid of the so-called haunted house. After sorting out the plot, Li Feng said, "Speaking of Screaming Shack, we have to say Lupin. He was bitten by a werewolf since he was a child, but later he was not seen through when he was at Hogwarts school. What do you think is the identity of a werewolf?" Li Feng reminded him that it was related to Lupin's identity as a werewolf, so why? Creature leaned his head and counted his fingers, calculating what, and after a while, Creature, with a cute expression, opened his eyes and whispered, "The time when the Screaming Shack appeared was exactly when Lupin appeared in Hogwarts' time." "Yes," Li Feng said with a grin. "That was the place where Dumbledore took Lupin to transform him while studying at Hogwarts, and at the same time used a beating willow on the campus to protect the entrance and exit." The villagers in Hogsmeade heard the noise and screams and thought it was the sound of a ferocious ghost. In addition, Dumbledore specifically encouraged people to spread such rumors, making the villagers subconsciously fear and stay away from the Screaming Hut, which is conservative. Lupin's secret also protects the safety of the villagers from being bitten by Lupin, who has turned into a werewolf. But now, it's just cheap for us to let us sneak into Hogwarts through the Screaming Hut. Kreacher blinked and asked, "Boss, are you taking me there?" "Definitely." Li Feng glanced at the room, and said, "The daily cost of living in the Broken Cauldron Bar is not a small expense. When we settle down at Hogwarts, we will hide in the school in the future, but sometimes you still have to go out of school and buy some materials for me, so you still have to get familiar with and master some channels as soon as possible." After speaking, Li Feng took out the magic book and the time converter information and gave it to Kreacher, and signaled that Kreacher was optimistic about a suitcase full of supplies at home. That was all of Li Feng's belongings. He didn't want to be stolen by a thief. Li Summit was crying in the toilet. "Kreacher, after taking me to the Screaming Shack, you will return to the Broken Cauldron Bar and translate the information about the time converter into Chinese characters and copy it into the magic book. The teleportation of the house elves is different from the necromancer's apparition, but Li Feng still feels uncomfortable, and he is squeezed out of space just like passing through the door, so when Kreacher brought Li Feng to the Screaming Shed, Li Feng's first reaction is his hands on his knees, breathing heavily. "Maiden, isn't there a more comfortable way to teleport? Or are space spells all virtuous? Or don't say that teleport is related to space, just change the name to milking spell." After a while, Kreacher saw that Li Feng had been relieved from the side effects of the teleport spell, and said, "Boss, I'm going back to copy the information." After speaking, Kreacher put down some torches and other tools, and instantly disappeared in front of Li Feng. Li Feng scratched his head, and while stomping the wooden floor with his feet on the side of the stairs, he amused himself. "I only remember that the entrance of the passage is under the floor next to the stairs, but I don't know where it is, just in case. It's not easy to find the entrance. The small shack, don't blame me for buying a few Erha known as the experts of house demolition and keeping it with you." Before Li Feng finished muttering, Li Feng felt that the sound of the floor under his feet was a little abnormal, and there was a hollow echo. "Is this found? Does the house in the magical world have spirituality? Are you afraid of the demolition creature like Erha? Otherwise, how come I discovered the entrance just as I was talking about Erha?" Li Feng licked his lips without saying anything. He raised his hand and gave a magical shock to the floor. The floor that had long been decayed could not stand Li Feng's toss, and suddenly a dark hole appeared under the impact of magical power. Flicking his eyes with one hand, Li Feng, who opened the Dharma Eye, lit a torch, jumped into the dark passage, and walked to the exit of the Beating Lou. Li Feng carefully poked his head out of the hole and glanced at the Beating Willow, who twisted himself into a twist and rested quietly. Not sure about the sleeping quality of the Beating Willow plant, and not wanting to disturb this plant that likes to beating people, Li Feng carefully probed around, crept out of the passage, and ran into the school along a small path under the cover of night. I don't know whether to say Hogwarts is old enough, or it's too late now. The students and teachers have already gone to bed to rest. Li Feng, who entered the school with the Dharma Eye open, did not run into any figure after he walked for half an hour. However, the ghosts met a few people. You must know that Hogwarts really have ghosts, or the kind that can serve as a night guard. Fortunately, through Thaei of the law, Li Feng can avoid it in advance. For a long time, Li Feng, who had not found any hidden spots, stayed in a dark corner, silently watching a fast-moving snake-shaped spirit appear in the wall. Don't bother to guess. Li Feng understands that the guy with such a large body volume and able to swim in the water pipe is the monster in the secret room, that is, the snake staring at who is pregnant. No, it's the snake staring at who is pregnant. Strange. Mr. Basilisk, be dumbfounded, your staring ability can't penetrate the wall, so now you find that I can't stare at me, but I can see you clearly. I remember that petrified student incidents happened in corridors and other places, so this basilisk must be able to crawl out of the water pipe. Li Feng scratched his head. How about following this basilisk to find the entrance to the underground secret room, or to see where his den is? After all, that is my future home. It's not good if I don't understand a little bit. As for this basilisk, Why don't I find some steel and a welding machine when he is back to the snake's nest? Let me, an elementary level welder, show his hand, and weld his door to death, so that I don't need to give it to him. I messed up. In terms of when the welding machine was invented, is there a welding machine in this world? The power supply is also a problem. Should I open a portal to the power plant and borrow some electricity directly? Li Feng relaxed his mind with self-entertainment, while watching the basilisk spirit body vigilantly, in case the basilisk suddenly got out of the water pipe and belched himself. After a while, the basilisk really crawled out of a door that seemed to be painted on the wall, as Li Feng had imagined. When the snake's head was just exposed, Li Feng quickly opened the mirror space to isolate himself from the real world. Li Feng didn't believe it. As a mirror space that could isolate the devil from hell, the basilisk could still stare him to death through the mirror space. If the basilisk really has such a powerful ability, Li Feng will open the door and go home without saying a word, and then look for roosters that can lay eggs all over the world, and then look for some toads, let them help hatch the basilisk, and then bring a group of basilisks with Li Feng. Let alone such a small scene as the Battle of New York, Li Feng dared to directly face Thanos without Infinity Gauntlet. Even if Thanos' magic resistance is high, he can't be surrounded by a group of basilisks and still jump around. Until the basilisk figure disappeared in front of him, Li Feng grinned and opened the portal to leave the mirrored space and quickly got into the water pipe. After turning around the water pipe for a while, Li Feng, who had been walking down, came to a hole full of bones on the ground. Looking around at several passageways, Li Feng rubbed his brows to recall the direction of the basilisk's nest. For a long time, Li Feng, who could not remember anything, picked up a section of bones on the ground that seemed to be a mouse and threw it into the sky. Looking at a passage pointed by the mouse's skull, Li Feng raised his foot and walked into the passage. After a while, Li Feng looked at an iron gate with a snake relief. I just gave up the idea of looking for a secret room. Appeared in front of me so suddenly. Also, I forgot that the entrance of the secret room needs to be opened in snake language, and I can't get in even if I find the secret room, unless I find some TNT to blow you up. Since the door couldn't get in, what else could Li Feng hesitation? He rubbed his eyes that were a little sour because he kept his Dharma eye open all the time, then turned around and searched for other more open places. After a long time, Li Feng finally found a satisfactory open space, but before portraying the magic ring of Merlin, Li Feng must first determine whether the concentration of magic power in the tunnel at Hogwarts this time is the same as that on the campus. If it is different from the campus, Li Feng would venture to practice near the basilisk's den if he was stupid. Chapter 71. A quarter of an hour later, Li Feng, who was sitting cross-legged on a rock meditating, opened his eyes. Fortunately, this magic concentration is strong enough. There is nothing to say. Since Hogwarts' underground magic concentration is still very high, Li Feng immediately drew Merlin's magic ring on the ground. After a while, Li Feng stood in the middle of the magic ring of Merlin and took a deep breath to calm his mind. After that, the physical body sat cross-legged, while the spiritual body came out of the body and floated in midair to meditate. At the moment the magic power poured in, Li Feng obviously felt that his magic power was soaring, and couldn't help grinning his mouth to reveal his posterior molars. If the magic power of gathering is usually 1, the value of gathering at Hogwarts is 3, and turning on Merlin the magic ring and the spirit body, don't know how many times it has been doubled. The most important thing is that the magic here is mild and there is no side effect of indigestion. Maybe let me stay at Hogwarts for a few years, and when I return to Marvel, I can't play except Ancient One. The remaining Holy Place magician will not be my opponent, even if it's Mordor. Opponent, this feeling of strength, cool. I don't know how long it took. Li Feng, who was meditating with his saliva, only felt that his stomach was starting to noisy, and he made hungry, cocks, as if to remind Li Feng that it was time for supper. Li Feng, who stopped meditating, rubbed his stomach, got up and destroyed Merlin's magic ring, followed the water pipe and prepared to climb into Hogwarts. In a certain potions classroom in Hogwarts, Li Feng remembered that somewhere in the cupboard or the bookcase, there was a potion textbook that Snape called himself a half-blood prince when he was a student, and made various potions on it, enough to make Li Feng greedy. With no one in Hogwarts at night, Li Feng wanted to take the opportunity to find this notebook. It doesn't matter if he is too lucky to find it. The big deal is that after Hogwarts summer vacation, let Creature put all the potions in the classroom. Turn over and find it again. Li Feng crawled out of the water pipe and came to a utility room. Just before he opened the door to observe the surroundings, Li Feng heard a male questioning sound from behind him. Who are you? I wonder if I haven't seen you. Li Feng's expression froze, and his heart bitterly said, would you like to be so moldy? I'm like eating a Hogwarts midnight snack, judging how the school's elf craftsmanship compares with Creature, and then just looking for a book by the way. Did you meet the professor? Li Feng, who slowly turned around with his hands, saw a burning bag in a slightly pink suit. Professor. Li Feng said in an uncertain tone, Professor Guidro Lockhart, good evening. Lockhart nodded slightly, glanced at the utility room, and said suspiciously, good evening sir, you are. Sure enough, it is this stuff. Other professors are necromancer gowns that have not been changed for thousands of years. Only the professor who wrote the book can wear such fancy. Li Feng glanced at Lockhart's empty hands, looked behind Lockhart with a grin, and said, Principal Dumbledore, good evening. Lockhart watched Li Feng beckon roar behind him, and he still beckoned roar with the principal. He subconsciously turned his head and looked behind him, but there was no Dumbledore behind Lockhart. Just as Lockhart turned his head in doubt and was about to ask Li Feng what's the situation, Li Feng had already raised his casserole-sized fist close to Lockhart. Before Lockhart could react, Li Feng punched Lockhart, fainted on the ground. Li Feng probed the quiet surroundings and dragged Lockhart into the utility room neatly. In the utility room, Li Feng looked at Lockhart lying on the ground and couldn't help touching his chin. He said to himself, the appearance of the body is always not good when seen by outsiders, and it is easy to be wanted by the Ministry of Magic and the school. I'm sorry, Professor Lockhart, let me use your little face. When Li Feng thought about it, although he learned the shapeshifting spell from the world of Magician Apprentice, his mastery is not perfect, and there are many flaws in the daytime, but in Hogwarts at night, the only goalkeeper and manager who can't use magic. Member, Mr. Argus Filch will show up in the corridor with his cat. Oh, I almost forgot, that cat was the first creature to be petrified by a basilisk this semester, so there is only Filch now. People are patrolling the night in the corridor. Li Feng felt that he had become Lockhart, using the night to cover it up. As long as Filch was not allowed to come in front of him for investigation, he should still be able to fool him. And with Lockhart's identity, Li Feng was able to furiously search for the Half-Blood Prince notebook and kitchen in every classroom. It's just that Li Feng's wishful thinking was too ideal. He just changed his clothes into Lockhart and walked out of the utility room against the other's face. Li Feng turned his head and saw Filch bowing his head and looking at him curiously. Before Li Feng could speak, Filch grabbed Li Feng and said as he walked, "Did you not listen to what Professor McGonagall said?" All the professors gathered in the corridor on the second floor. Gather. Li Feng was a little dazed. He didn't sleep in the middle of the night, and all the professors gathered. Hogwarts is not a military academy. I didn't hear that there was a night gathering. Just when Li Feng was thinking about whether to feint Filch, Filch had pulled Li Feng through a corner and came to the corridor with bright torches on both sides of the wall. More importantly, Li Feng saw a large group of people in the distance. People, whispering while looking at a wall. Yes, now I can stun Filch and I can't run. Li Feng drooped his face, regretting that his brain was twitching just now. Why did he bother about why Hogwarts gathered at night, causing him to miss the shot? The best chance to dizzy Filch is all right now. With a group of professors around, Li Feng just feels panicked. In order to avoid being discovered that he is a fake Lockhart, Li Feng stood listlessly at the back of the crowd, praying that everyone would not see him. Unfortunately, Li Feng's luck today was so bad that he was taken far away as soon as he arrived. Snape took a fancy. Lockhart has been a professor at school for so many days. Snape knew that the other party was a liar who ran a train with his mouth full. In addition, Lockhart had repeatedly provoked Snape unconsciously. Snape had long seen Lockhart not pleasing to the eye. Snape wouldn't miss the opportunity if he had a chance to rectify the opponent. Just seeing Lockhart hiding behind the crowd uncharacteristically, Snape, who felt something was wrong, frowned, thinking, with this guy's past style, shouldn't he run to himself and open his mouth to show off his wealth of knowledge? Why did you hide so far today? Isn't this Lockhart fake? After thinking about it, Snape said to Li Feng, Professor Lockhart, a student was taken away by a monster. Your chance to act has come. Li Feng subconsciously stared and said, performance. Yes, said Snape, who looked expressionless but was actually observing Li Feng carefully. Last night, didn't you say that you always knew where the entrance to the secret room was? McGonagall on the side was also full of disgust at Lockhart, who the blind man saw as a liar, and said quietly, it's just right, I trouble you to deal with monsters alone. After all, we have never seen you show off, no problem. Professor Lockhart. Don't talk nonsense, it's not what I said, I just find something to eat, just look for a book by the way. Li Feng, who was almost crying, took a long time to remember that this was the end of Harry II's plot. The basilisk took Harry's future wife, Ginny Weasley, to the secret room, and finally committed himself to death. You said that it's not good for you to kidnap the ticket, the wife of the protagonist, isn't this boring? Don't know if the protagonist will kneel down under the aura of the protagonist. But for now, let's fool Snape and the others, especially Snape, what hatred you and Lockhart are, no matter how you look at me, they don't look good. The problem is that I'm not the real one. Lockhart, Li Feng Shanshan whispered. It's okay to take you to the entrance of the secret room, but I need to prepare something. Anyway, Li Feng has decided to fool a few people and find a chance to leave. Whether he is a basilisk or not, this is something Harry, the protagonist, should worry about. He is a soy saucer. As for the notebook, definitely I'll look for it later. It's a pity that Snape, who began to doubt Li Feng, would obviously not let Li Feng go easily. Seeing that Li Feng was evasive, the corner of Snape's mouth raised slightly and said, what do I need to prepare? I'll help you. After that, Snape walked up to Li Feng in a posture afraid of you running. Li Feng took a step back subconsciously, and Shanshan said, no, I can do it myself. Li Feng's retreat made Snape feel that the other party was in a guilty conscience and reluctantly said, it's a pity to miss such a good performance opportunity, and with this experience, you can write a best-selling novel, can't you? Looking at your Snape's posture, Li Feng felt that he could not run away without a big move. After recalling the plot, Li Feng said quietly, do you know the bathroom where the gold rusher is? The entrance to the secret room is there, but let me in the face of that basilisk, I can only say that I was able to protect myself, and would kill the enemy but lack the strength, unless you can destroy the eyes of the basilisk. Aside, Professor McGonagall heard Li Feng's words and couldn't help covering his mouth and said, basilisk. Are you sure there is a basilisk in the school? Li Feng shrugged and said, there are many reasons. I remember Harry told me one day that he heard someone talking nearby, but I didn't hear it at all. At first I thought it was Harry who was too tired to have auditory hallucinations, but then we all know that Harry can speak snakes, so can we imagine that Harry did hear something talking about a creature nearby, but the creature was a snake, so we couldn't hear it. Remember the spiders running around in the school? The spider's natural enemy is the basilisk, and in the end Hagrid's rooster will eventually die inexplicably. I don't think I need to say anything. The basilisk is afraid of roosters crowing, so the rooster is the owner of the basilisk, which is killed by the descendants of Slytherin. After thinking about it, Professor McGonagall retorted, if it is really a basilisk, then how many you explain to the petrochemical students? Snape thoughtfully said, only when you look at the basilisk will you be killed, and several students see the basilisk either through the camera or through the mirror, so they escaped death by chance. It's just petrified. Li Feng gave Snape a thumbs up, indicating that the other party was right. But Snape obviously didn't eat this set, and said, since you know that monsters are basilisks, you should be allowed to deal with them. By the way, let me witness how you killed the snake. Ma Dan, after a long time I said why I should go, and what does it mean to witness me killing a basilisk? In Snape's eyes, the real Lockhart's brain is filled with scum. He can do nothing but show off his feathers like a peacock. It can be said that he does not match his face and body higher than the monster. It was suspected that Lockhart was the offspring of a certain troll, but the one in front of him knew how to use reasoning to figure out that the monster was a basilisk. This was very unreasonable, so Snape was certain that Lockhart in front of him was the one. Counterfeit goods. Since the opponent is not the real Lockhart, will Snape let Li Feng leave alone before he can figure out the identity and purpose of the opponent? This is obviously impossible. Professor McGonagall is just the difference. Lockhart has changed differently, but he didn't care about these changes, and asked, Then do you know who is the true descendant of Slytherin? Knowing is knowing, but what do you say when you let me be in the public? Saying that everything was caused by Harry's wife. I don't know that Harry has the protagonist aura, can't ordinary people not afford it? Let's wait for my superior strength to speak in front of the crowd someday. Now, I'm still obscenely developed, not wavering. Li Feng looked around and saw that everyone was looking at him curiously. He could only shake his head with a little helplessness and said, I don't know, there are too few clues. Professor McGonagall said regretfully. Well, if you don't know, you know, the situation is urgent. Please save the student who was captured by the basilisk first to discuss who is the descendant of Slytherin. And McGonagall, sister, did I provoke you? Why did you also let me kill the basilisk? Li Feng stared and said, I can't beat the basilisk. Professor McGonagall looked at Li Feng with uncertain eyes. Now she doesn't know if Lockhart in front of her can handle the basilisk. If it is the liar in memory, Professor McGonagall will only frighten him and let him go. Leaving, but now, it seems that Lockhart is not as weak as he thought. Aside, Snape sneered, don't be humble, you are almost as good as Dumbledore. Does it make any difference whether a blind basilisk is or not? After that, Snape took Li Feng to the bathroom where the gold digger was located, slandering inside, if the basilisk is blind, it is your turn to show the limelight, and any professor present can play the blind basilisk. It's just an excuse to pull you on to deal with the basilisk. By the way, just see who you are. Professor McGonagall saw that the two of them were going to destroy the basilisk now. After thinking about it, he turned to Mrs. Pomfrey, who was in charge of the school doctor, and said, please prepare some antidote. The basilisk can kill people with its eyes. Don't underestimate the toxins you've made, and send it to the secret room as soon as possible after it's made to prevent someone from being poisoned. After speaking, Professor McGonagall hurriedly followed Snape's footsteps. Just as Li Feng was about to break free from Snape's big hand and escape, Snape pushed Li Feng's jaw with his wand and whispered in his ear, tell me your true identity or become my bait to deal with the basilisk. Li Feng froze, seeing that I was a copycat so quickly. I know that the shape-shifting technique is not well mastered, and there are too many flaws. Li Feng signaled Snape to let go of himself, and while preparing the spell secretly, he said, Austin, Dumbledore knows me, we are not enemies. McGonagall, who had just walked in front of Li Feng, looked at Li Feng in surprise, took out a letter from his pocket and handed it to Snape, motioning for Snape to read it for himself, and said, you are Austin. Dumbledore tonight. Wrote a letter to me and said a lot about you, especially telling me that you are going to sneak into the school. I didn't expect you to enter the school that night. How did you get into the school? Li Feng raised his brows. Now that the two professors knew his specific identities, he still maintained the shape-shifting technique. For Li Feng, who had little magic power, wasting magic power was a shameful behavior. While restoring his original appearance, Li Feng said, I just walked in like this. I hope Comrade Dang will praise me as a very good person in his letter. It's a pity that I didn't see the word good guy. Snape, who read the letter at a glance, said with his magic wand, the letter says you are a traitor. What trade is you pretending to be Lockhart? Show off with your mouth cannon, do you use your strength to cover his mouth cannon? Oh, yes, asked Professor McGonagall, who was worried about Li Feng's treatment of Lockhart, causing the school's reputation loss. What about Lockhart? What did you do to him? Li Feng scratched his head. What Lockhart said was necromancer, and his physique is different from ordinary people, so when Li Feng started, he only knew how to stun the opponent with all his strength. As for how long the opponent would be in a coma, Li Feng said he didn't know. In a utility room, sleeping. Snape understood the consciousness in Li Feng's words, and said, just talk about fainting. After that, Snape looked at McGonagall and said, Lockhart's affairs will be discussed. The most important thing is right now. The thing is to rescue the hapless student first. In this regard, McGonagall agreed, and while reaching out to signal Snape to lead the way, he asked Li Feng, Mr. Austin, you said before that you can protect yourself from the basilisk. Can you protect us while protecting yourself? Let us do the killing of the basilisk. Just let me be an assistant, it's easy. Li Feng nodded and said, I can protect you from any harm, but can your magic kill the basilisk? Snape, who walked to the front of the snake killer group, said, then you won't worry about it, but Dumbledore said you like trading, so let you help kill the basilisk. What do you want? Li Feng licked his lips, and said greedily, I want a lot of things, your potions notebook, your knowledge of potions, and Professor McGonagall's knowledge of shapeshifting. I won't be treated as if I met him in school in the future. Saw me. Before Li Feng could finish, Snape turned around and sneered at Li Feng. Do you think I can't kill the basilisk without you? If you dare to make so many demands, you are not afraid that I will turn you to the Ministry of Magic and let you stay in Azkaban. That's my place. What is the difference between going to Azkaban and going home? When I go back to school, it's just a portal thing. Li Feng glanced at McGonagall and thought to himself, it seems that Dumbledore doesn't write everything in the letter. You can choose one of the conditions I put forward, and I didn't say that you would replace all the options with the conditions that protect you. McGonagall nodded slightly, and said for Snape, then choose a condition in exchange. Snape glanced at McGonagall, agreed and turned to lead the way. After a while, the three people came to the second floor, in an abandoned female washing room. Li Feng pointed to the serpentine faucet on the round washing table, and said, the entrance can be opened with snake language. After speaking, Li Feng looked at how the two professors opened the entrance to the secret room with an expression ready to watch the play, but Snape opened the entrance in a different way than Li Feng thought. Originally, Li Feng thought that Snape would let Harry come to help, but this guy didn't know if he wanted to show off his strength in front of Li Feng, or simply didn't want to see Harry's face, so he blasted the vanity table into pieces with his magic wand. Expose the hidden channel. Snape jumped into the channel without thinking, but Li Feng could only helplessly jump into the channel under Professor McGonagall's eyes. It's not that Li Feng, who jumped into the passage, never thought of running away, but Li Feng felt that since he had talked with both of them about trading, he was a bit of a waste of the opportunity to gain magic knowledge after leaving. After all, whether it was learning Snape's potion skills, or McGonagall's knowledge of shapeshifting, which is an uncompromising trade for Li Feng. Li Feng, who already knew where the secret room was, returned to the pothole full of skeletons, and the two people who were familiar with the door in the road came to the round door with the embossed snake and said, agree to open the door in snake language. Or blow him up. Li Feng secretly used magic power with bewitching power, and said, 2, I will make sure again. The basilisk is inside. After opening this door, I will guarantee that you will not suffer any harm as a condition in exchange for the certain one mentioned earlier. Conditions, such as learning from Professor Snape's knowledge of magic and Professor McGonagall's knowledge of shapeshifting, will the transaction be established. Although Snape and McGonagall perceive Li Feng's magical power fluctuations, they see that the other party has not activated any magic, thinking that Li Feng is just starting a defensive method, and subconsciously want to find an opportunity to teach Li Feng's own knowledge after they return. Nodded and said, yes. Hearing this, Li Feng, who understood the success of the temptation spell, took a step back with a grin, indicating that the two could perform various fancy blasting magic. With the combined efforts of the two powerful professors, the last entrance guarding the secret room was also exploded. Snape and McGonagall each pointed their wands to their foreheads, looked at each other, and went into the secret room. Although Li Feng didn't know what magic the two had imposed on them, he also understood that it was a spell to prevent the basilisk from staring to death. The basilisk needs to wait for his master to call before it will show up, so two of you are wasting precious magic power. Whispering his mouth, Li Feng got into the secret room with disdain. Unlike in the movie, Harry could immediately see Ginny lying on the ground after entering the secret room. In reality, Li Feng said that he couldn't even read his fingers. How could he have the time to see the little girl on the ground? The two professors also understood that in a dark environment, only the basilisk would kill them one by one. Thinking of this, the two professors simultaneously cast a spell, fluorescence blinking. It's just that the fluorescence flashing of the two is obviously different from what Li Feng remembered. Let's not say that the secret room is the same as during the day, it is different if the two beams of light float on the heads of their respective owners. The moment the dark chamber brightened, the two professors saw Ginny lying on the ground at the same time, and McGonagall trot towards Ginny, while Snape was trotting while guarding the surroundings to prevent the basilisk from suddenly appearing. Caused by surprise. Soon, the three ran up to Ginny. McGonagall squatted beside Ginny, touched Ginny's pulse and said, "Thank Merlin, she is still alive, but she needs to be sent to the hospital as soon as possible." Professor McGonagall, things are probably not as simple as you thought. Looking at Snape not far away, as if he had found something, he narrowed his eyes and said, "Come out, I found you." In a corner of the secret room, Tom Marvolo Riddle, hiding in a dark corner, found himself depressed when Snape found out. His plan was not like this. Shouldn't his opponent Harry Potter come? Why are 3 professors here? One of them is totally unknown to Ginny. What does this mean? Is there any professor at Hogwarts that the student hasn't seen? As a Horcrux made during Voldemort's youth, Tom said that he had been honestly staying in his notebook and never expected that he would return to Hogwarts one day. Originally, he would come back, just to find a physical body to resurrect, and Tom even planned how to show his hands and feet for his ideals after the resurrection. But when he returned to school to plan his resurrection, when Tom learned that his future self was killed by a kid, he suddenly became calm. Why, I am young and more golden, he looks more handsome than Harry, and why he is still a baby, can Harry kill his future self? So this time Tom captured Ginny to the secret room not just to resurrect himself, but also wanted to meet the impulsive Harry, and by the way, see if there is a chance to let the basilisk kill the opponent, so as to save trouble in the future. It's just that Harry didn't see it, but saw 3 professors. The most important thing is that he is just a memory and has not been fully resurrected. Tom said that he has everything except controlling the basilisk to kill. How can he fight? After thinking about it, Tom simply summoned the basilisk and wanted to use the power of the basilisk to destroy the 3 people who had destroyed his resurrection. Snape saw that he was clearly called the hidden person, but the other party was still deceiving himself as if he was bluffing the other party. He suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. He was about to raise his wand to attack, and suddenly heard a sound of glass breaking, and he was wrapped in himself. In a strange space, Snape and McGonagall thought it was the descendants of Slytherin attacking them. When they were about to cast a spell to break through the mirrored space, they opened their eyes to see the basilisk about to haunt Li Feng, and said quietly, "Too, this is me." The means of self-preservation, in this mirrored space, let alone the basilisk cannot stare at us, it may not even find it now. After speaking, Li Feng looked in the direction of Tom, who had suddenly disappeared, in wonder. What happened? I just found out that there was a broken spirit body, why suddenly ran away? Looking at the basilisk who appeared on the scene, looking around with a confused face, Snape frowned, raised his hand and shot a small powerful magic shot onto the space wall at the edge of the mirrored space, and said, "Your protection is very good. The basilisk really can't kill us, but don't you think we can't attack the basilisk even if we hide in a different space?" Can't attack? How could it be possible? Li Feng wondered where Tom was going, and stretched out his hand to open the portal close to the back of the basilisk, and said, "This is called a portal." At the moment when the portal opened, Li Feng suddenly saw Tom's spirit appearing in the distance. He was shocked. Li Feng continued, "You can bombard the back of the basilisk with magic through the portal. If you are not afraid of being stunned, you can also directly open the portal to the eyes of the basilisk." McGonagall raised his hand and let out a powerful, split to pieces, curse, and said, "No, that's great. I'm very satisfied with your protection." Snape glanced at Li Feng, then looked at the white mark on the back of the basilisk that was blown up by the split to pieces curse, and sighed that the basilisk's thick skin also shot out magic while holding his wand. Although the basilisk's skin has high magic resistance, it will also feel pain under endless magical attacks, especially after McGonagall and Snape are sure that the basilisk is indeed unable to handle themselves. They raise their hands to use all kinds of powerful magic. Li Feng glanced at the magic of the two inadvertently, only to feel that his saliva was about to flood the skirts of his clothes. Li Feng, who maintained the portal spell, carefully watched the basilisk's actions, and as soon as the basilisk showed signs of turning around, he closed the portal and quickly reopened the portal close to the back of the basilisk. At the moment when the portal was closed, Li Feng found that Tom, who watched the professor violently abuse the basilisk in the distance, disappeared at the same time. Looking at Ginny, who was lying on the ground dying, Li Feng felt that he already understood what was going on. The mirror space not only protected Snape and McGonagall, he also isolated Tom from appearing in the real world. So it's not impossible for Tom to show up after the portal is closed, but he can only appear in the mirrored space, and Tom, who has no power to bind the chicken, dared to appear in the mirrored space rashly. When Li Feng closed the portal, Snape and McGonagall had some ways to concoct him. Li Feng squatted in front of Ginny, looked at the notebook on the other's waist. A thought suddenly popped into his mind. Maybe I can get this notebook, but I don't know if the slave contract has any effect on the Horcrux, which means I have one more teacher who is good at all kinds of black magic. Li Feng remembers that Tom can be resurrected by his life contact with Ginny. The weaker Ginny's life aura is, the stronger Tom will be. But before he is fully resurrected, Tom's connection with the notebook is stronger. This is also Harry's use of snake teeth. Tom will die when wearing a notebook, the two can be said to be one. In addition, as soon as the portal was closed, Tom's spirit body disappeared. This gave Li Feng an opportunity to operate, such as throwing the notebook out of the mirror space to isolate the connection between Tom and Ginny. Can go back to the notebook. Definitely, if Ginny's safety can be guaranteed, Li Feng doesn't mind throwing Ginny out of the mirror space. He has a good chat with Tom in the mirror space, such as reviving the other party to teach him black magic. Whoever makes Tom most want is to resurrect, and Li Feng has the technology of resurrection. Although it is a technological method, it is also resurrected. I believe Tom will agree to exchange it. Thinking of this, Li Feng picked up his notebook and thought, I don't know if Fury has gone to resurrect the corpse. They returned to S.H.I.E.L.D., hee. Snape was able to eat under the hands of mysterious people because he was cautious and cautious enough by nature. Now he can be more assured of knowing Li Feng for less than an hour, so when he can attack the basilisk with confidence, Snape always put a guard on Li Feng. Seeing that Li Feng smirked as if he had picked up a huge sum of money and picked up the notebook from Ginny's chest, Snape subconsciously felt that something was wrong. While casting magic on the basilisk, he asked, Mr. Austen, secretly take the little girl. My notebook is not a gentleman's behavior, can you explain it? Li Feng held up the notebook with a grin and shook it, throwing it into the portal without paying attention, and said, I think this notebook is too ugly and it doesn't go with this pretty girl, so I helped throw it away. It's a big deal. After the blame was stewed into snake soup, I bought a stack of beautiful notebooks for the little girl as a plea. What do you think of this explanation? Not very good. Snape frowned, looked at the notebook outside of the spectacle space, and said, I seem to hear someone yelling hoarsely just now. On the side, seeing the portal closing again, McGonagall put down his wand and looked at Snape, and said, I heard it too. I thought it was an illusion. After speaking, McGonagall looked at Li Feng, who still hadn't opened the portal, and asked, Mr. Austen, do you know the reason, and why didn't you open the portal? Yes, I know who is yelling, but I think it would be better to talk to Dumbledore on this matter. Li Feng said with a shy expression while rubbing his wrists. As for the portal, you don't think opening the door requires magic. Maintain. I don't have as much magic power as you guys, so let me rest for a while. In fact, Li Feng just wants to see if his speculation is correct. If Ginny can wake up, it means that the mirror space can indeed isolate Tom from ingesting vitality. This allows Li Feng to pry out magic from Tom's mouth. Pseudo-angel feather restrains Tom, and there is the temptation of resurrection. With the mirror space that isolates everything as punishment, Li Feng really doesn't believe that he can't pry out black magic from Tom's mouth. If Ginny didn't wake up, Li Feng should consider using the notebook in exchange for Dumbledore. After all, if he destroyed the notebook, he won't get any benefits, so why not use it as a waste? The good news is that after the notebook was thrown out of the mirror space, Li Feng's Dharma eye had already seen that Ginny's vitality was not dissipating, but there were signs of recovery. Li Feng nodded slightly, and reached out his hand to release physical recovery to Ginny to speed up Ginny's recovery. After a while, Ginny, who had recovered some strength, opened her confused eyes and looked at Professor McGonagall with a worried look. Professor, what's wrong with me? McGonagall seems to treat the 4 colleges equally. Even if the students of his college violate the school regulations, he will be severely punished. He is a tutor who likes to treat students fairly, but if he cares about the students, look at Ginny's face when she was taken away. Professor McGonagall knows. Seeing that Ginny was awakened under Li Feng's spell, and her face continued to return to ruddy, McGonagall gratefully said thank you to Li Feng, lowered his head and hugged Ginny, and said, thank you for Merlin's beard. It's great that you are fine. On the side, Snape looked at the ruby ring on Li Feng's finger with a vigilant look. He noticed that whether it was the mirror space or the portal, and the final spell for Ginny, Li Feng was casting the spell empty-handed. Had it not been for the ruby ring on Li Feng's finger that the magic power fluctuated during the cast, he would have thought that Li Feng was casting the spell without a wand. Seeing Snape staring at his ring, Li Feng shrugged and said, "It's not the time to celebrate the victory. There is a huge amount of snake soup outside waiting for you to cook." After speaking, Li Feng stretched out his hand to open the portal and signaled the two to continue to cheer, while he was watching the big show. Outside of the mirror space, Tom, who had lost his vitality to ingest the object, honestly hid back into his notebook. The basilisk was a little confused after failing to perceive Tom. It didn't know whether to go back to the snake's den to sleep or continue to execute Tom's order to kill the invisible professor. Just when the basilisk decided to go home to take a rest, it felt that the previous aperture appeared against its back again, followed by a brilliant magic blow on the body. Even if the basilisk's magic resistance is high, it can't handle this kind of rubbing that can only be fancy slammed, but can't make an effective counterattack. In the end, it can only stare miserably and lie down in a deadly posture with hatred. In the secret room, it became a pile of magical materials in Li Feng's eyes. Seeing the motionless basilisk, Li Feng scratched his head and asked, "Are you going out now or roasting the basilisk body before going out?" Snape glanced at Li Feng and sneered, "Don't you know that snakes can live for a while even if their heads are cut off? McGonagall and I are not afraid to look at the basilisk when we go out now, but can you? Can you live even if your head is cut off? Are you a flies or Xiaoqiang as a snake? Can you continue to mate and reproduce offspring without your head?" Li Feng, who felt speechless, wanted to tell Snape whether it was a question of whether it was alive or not, but that the snake's nerves were like this. "Will react naturally. What are we doing now? Continue to admire the enchanting corpse of the basilisk." Spreading his hands, Li Feng said, "I don't have this hobby." McGonagall, who comforted Ginny, glanced at the basilisk and said, "When the basilisk's eyes lose their magic, we can leave the mirror space." Seeing that Li Feng didn't understand how to see that the eyes of the basilisk had lost its magic, McGonagall added, "Just look at the luster of the eyes of the basilisk. As long as the eyes of the snake are dim, it means that it has lost its petrifying effect on you and Ginny. Then we can leave the secret room." Li Feng nodded, indicating that he understood it. This is like when a doctor in a hospital initially judges whether a patient is dead. He only needs to open his eyelids and check the patient's eyes to understand. If it is other creatures, Li Feng said that he has a better way to judge whether the opponent is dead. Only this kind of basilisk with super long neural reflexes, he said that his eyes can't see it. Who knows that when he unintentionally appreciates snake pupils, will the basilisk's nervous system suddenly convulsions and petrify him? For a long time, McGonagall saw that the snake pupil had lost its luster, and glanced at Snape vaguely. Seeing Snape nodded slightly, McGonagall motioned to Li Feng to open the portal and led Ginny, who was relatively stable, out of the mirror space. After Li Feng left the mirror space, he picked up Tom's notebook for the first time, then he chirped his mouth, and surrounded the basilisk with interest. He kept asking Snape behind him, "Dude, you said snake blame the texture of the snake skin." Poor ghost. Snape raised his mouth slightly, and sneered, "Not very good. Let's not talk about how troublesome it is to deal with the rough snake skin like Toad, just the color of the snake's skin. You are sure you want to make a leather jacket what? And, I have to remind you that there is a kind of clothing in the world called dragon skin coat, which is much better than snake skin, and after years of research, dragon skin is easy to handle and has a variety of styles." Li Feng's movement of stroking the snake skin became stiff. "Ma Dan, I have forgotten that there are dragons in this world." No wonder Harry didn't pay attention to this fat snake after killing the basilisk. Harry is a rich second-generation rich family. Skin. As for snake meat, I dare not eat it anyway. Snake blood and snake venom are still good materials, Snape said while taking out a glass test tube from his pocket. "If you have props, you can collect some like me to make some potions." Li Feng saw that Snape was holding a file-sized test tube with only his thumb in one hand, while using a magic wand to guide the blood of the basilisk to fly into the test tube, but the glass test tube seemed like a bottomless pit, and no snake blood was spilled. As expected to be an expert in refining medicine, and carrying a test tube of the traceless curse with him, seeing Snape's stance of not letting go of the snake's blood, Li Feng said with a little speechlessness, "Excuse me, please keep some snakes. Give me blood, I still want materials." Snape glanced at Li Feng, nodded and put away the test tube, and when he walked towards Snaketooth to collect some snake venom, he seemed to remember what was going on. The corner of his mouth turned up and smiled. "Dumbledore said that you took a batch of small Jin Jelong of Sirius, has to leave the house elves that symbolize the nobility." Li Feng frowned. Although he knew that Snape and Sirius were not dealing with each other, Snape's happiest thing was to see Sirius and others deflated, but now there is neither a cafe for us to sit down and chat, nor time to talk. I also want to wait for you to leave and ask Kreacher to come and save the freshly baked basilisk in slices, and have a good chat with Tom. Kreacher is indeed my servant now, Li Feng said while thinking about Snape's purpose of staying in the secret room. But that's the reward I deserve. As for Jin Jelong, Sirius had said to move. It depends a lot on my own ability. Since I have emptied my ability again, Jin Jelong definitely counts mine. After collecting the snake venom in the test tube, Snape smiled and put the test tube in his pocket. It's just that Snape had the attribute of facial paralysis. In Li Feng's eyes, his smile was like a skinny smile. "No matter how you look at it, I feel evil." Evacuation. Dumbledore didn't tell me this. Didn't you tell me? Or after Austin quietly returned to Sirius's house with his weird portal to vacate Jin Jelong, causing Dumbledore to now don't know. Maybe I'll have to contact Dumbledore personally later. It's best to see Sirius with my own eyes what it will look like when he knows his Jin Jelong is evacuated. Snape thoughtfully said, "Why do you only move Jin Jelong? You should empty his basement." Li Feng spread his hands and said, "I think too, but I don't have that ability, especially those magic books. With my strength, I can't touch them easily." Wanting to determine if Li Feng has ability, Snape, who entered and exited Black's old house at any time, pointed to himself and said, "Need help? If you want to empty Sirius' basement, I'll be happy to help you empty it." "What's the use of evacuation? You won't help me analyze the magic." Li Feng shook his head and said, "Forget it, let Sirius help me keep it for a while, and I will get it when I have enough strength." Quote. After talking to Snape for a while, an owl with a letter in its mouth flew in front of Snape, put it down, and turned and flew away. Snape opened the letter and glanced at it, then burned it casually. After glancing at the notebook in Li Feng's hand, he walked out of the secret room and said, Dumbledore wrote back, "Although he chose to believe you, I will still stare at you. This attitude has changed a bit quickly, and I had a good conversation just now." Li Feng picked up his notebook and glanced at it, and said, "Talking to me for a long time is just to delay waiting for Dumbledore to reply to you." Snape neither nodded nor said a word, and left the secret room on his own, with a slight pause under his feet, already telling Li Feng, "You guessed it." Feeling a little speechless, Li Feng shrugged, stretched out his hand to open the portal to the Broken Cauldron bar, and at the other end of the portal, Kreacher had already transcribed the time converter data, and was lying on the desk to check whether the transcript was correct. Kreacher said, "Come here and help." Although Snape said that dragon skin is better than snake skin, Li Feng said that he didn't have Jin Jelong to buy dragon skin clothes now, and he was too sorry to use the materials left by the basilisk. Don't look at the back flesh and blood of the basilisk being blown up with magic by McGonagall and Snape, but there are still a lot of good materials left, such as poisonous things like snake teeth, which can be exchanged for sale. Xiao Jin Jelongs. There is also snake gall, but Li Feng doesn't know if the basilisk has this stuff. If it does, it's probably worth a lot of money, especially the basilisk in front of me. Is it the basilisk with complete eyeballs, or both? The basilisk's ability is mostly in the snake pupil, which is also valuable for the snake pupil. It's just that Li Feng thought he didn't have the craftsmanship for collecting, and if it was damaged, he would suffer a big loss. So after Kreacher crossed the portal, Li Feng asked for the first time, "Kreacher, can you dismantle the basilisk?" Kreacher was a little stunned when he saw the huge amounts of basilisk. He clearly remembered that Li Feng told him at the beginning that there were basilisks in this world, but he didn't expect to see the basilisk so soon. It was still a freshly slaughtered basilisk. Basilisk. Kreacher heard Li Feng's question and hesitation said, "Boss, I'm not very good with alchemy decomposition techniques. If you just treat the basilisk as food for me to decompose, I'm sure to try break it down. After all, my cooking skills are still good." Li Feng thought for a while and asked, "You can cook basilisks?" Creature shook his head and said, "No, I can only cook snakes and grilled snakes, but this basilisk looks like a big snake, I don't mind trying it." "So I mind, this thing is called a basilisk, but it's not a snake." Li Feng silently rejected Creature's suggestion, and said, "Can you keep the basilisk? For example, freezing what? Wait until we find a buyer to unfreeze." Creature said that this is simple, it is the same as buying a broiler home and finding that he can't eat the whole one and refrigerating half of the broiler. Li Feng, whose eyes twitched slightly, looked at Creature always treating the basilisk as a kind of food. He always felt a little weird. It seems that I want to ban Creature from cooking me some messy food. At Li Feng's sign, Creature froze the basilisk into an ice sculpture and left it in the secret room. It's not that Li Feng didn't want to take it away, but that he had such a big basilisk, he had no place to hide, unless he emptied his coffin-like suitcase. As for the shrinking curse unique to this world, don't look at the basilisk already belching, but Creature said that the basilisk is a basilisk, and a magic resistance will weaken a lot after death, but he still has no rules. And what about Li Feng? His old man hasn't learned the magic of Harry's world seriously until now. Where is the technique of shrinking the basilisk? After the two were busy, they saved the body of the basilisk, and Li Feng opened the portal to return to the Broken Cauldron bar. Shrinking the magic book on the desk into a matchbox file size and putting it in his pocket, Li Feng asked Creature to bring a snake tooth certificate as evidence, and said, "Can you contact a buyer who is willing to buy a basilisk?" Seeing Creature nodded and took the snake's tooth, saying that he could do it, Li Feng returned to the secret room with the tent and food. Looking at the overly dark secret room, Li Feng struggled to hang some magic lights around. After illuminating the secret room, Li Feng opened the mirror space while gnawing on the bread and threw Tom's notebook into the mirror space, turning around to draw a picture on the ground. Merlin magic ring in order to restore mana as soon as possible. After a long time, Li Feng, who had recovered his mana, took a quill and got into the mirror space. Li Feng, who got into the mirrored space, put the wooden box containing the fake angel feathers aside. After thinking for a while, he felt that Tom had absorbed Ginny's vitality. It is estimated that there is ability who turned out to be out of the notebook and portrayed it on the ground. Some magic circles to restrain ghost. After that, Li Feng held the fangs of a basilisk in his left hand, and writhed in his notebook with a quill in his right hand. Is there any power to come out and talk? Tom, hiding in the notebook, was a little dazed. Li Feng wrote in American English, which was somewhat different from Tom's familiar words. If Tom had not learned a little bit, he really didn't understand what Li Feng wrote, but he understood what he wrote. Understand, Tom still has some hesitation. Should he chat with Li Feng rashly? After all, he still understands the reason for the bad guys. Seeing that the notebook had no response after writing the text, Li Feng put the wooden box on the notebook without thinking, opened a thin slit and said, "Check the water meter, I will pay for the water, otherwise don't blame me for poking you with snake teeth." Quote. After speaking, Li Feng gently cut a page with sharp snake teeth. Inside the notebook, when Li Feng opened the wooden box, Tom felt that someone had stripped himself clean and threw it into the boiling water to cook. Unfortunately, he was just a ray of remnant soul, and he still couldn't leave the notebook. There was nowhere to escape. You can enjoy the ability radiation of the pseudo-angel feather. When Li Feng cut through the notebook with snake teeth, Tom endured the pain in his soul and showed the words on the notebook, "Take the box away." Li Feng glanced at the text, curled his lips and wrote, "Come out to chat, mainly because your chat software is too useless, and you don't even have a voice function. You have to rely on ancient typing to chat. Be careful I give you a bad chat." Comment, "Besides, don't you know that Lousy didn't take a pen after graduating from high school? I can only recognize words, but write them. Some words really forgot how to write for a while." And seeing Li Feng writing a lot of nonsense, don't know why, Tom suddenly felt that he had the courage to face death, at least not to read such ugly words after death, and to be able to clean up. When Li Feng was about to wait impatiently and was about to tidy up and leave the mirrored space, twists and turns of text appeared on the notebook again. "Who are you?" Li Feng looked at his own writing and then at Tom's writing. He was inexplicably proud to see who else said my writing was ugly. Isn't there another guy who wants to write with me uglier? Li Feng also didn't want to think. Tom is still being scorched by the fake angel's feathers, and his hands are shaking. It's strange that he can write beautiful words. However, what Li Feng wanted was not a text chat. Since people didn't bother to show up and chat, Li Feng didn't know what politeness meant. He picked up the snake's teeth and tore a page of notes and said, "Either come out for a chat, or I'll give you to Dang Blado, I'll give you the opportunity. It's up to you whether you can grasp it. By the way, I remind you, I have the means to resurrect the corpse." Before Li Feng finished speaking, a transparent remnant with only the upper body appeared in the notebook. Looking at the young man who seemed to have his lower body stuck in his notebook, Li Feng smiled and said, "The other Voldemorts are all lying on the ground to avoid the enemy's sight. You are good to hide the lower body in the notebook. This hidden effort, shouldn't I? As expected to be Voldemort." Tom didn't know Voldemort's stock, and now he has no time to ask about it. After looking at the pseudo-angel feather that made him miserable, his lips trembled and said, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" Li Feng closed the wooden box with a grin, and said, "Spells, teach me the spell." Fierce fire is a flame with cursing power. It is a kind of magic fire that becomes stronger and stronger during the burning process. If the caster is strong enough, these flames can even be mimicked into the form of some monsters and have stronger attacks, force. The disadvantage is that Li Huo is difficult to control. Once out of control, Li Huo will chase down all objects that can burn, including the caster, regardless of the enemy and us. However, no matter how many shortcomings there are, Li Feng's yearning cannot be stopped. In the final analysis, all of this is the mono-reason of Li Feng's preference for darkness and flame attributes. Looking at Li Feng's current spells, they can basically be classified as white magic. There are only a few black magic pried from the devil, and these black magic Li Feng is still half knowledgeable, and he doesn't dare to use it easily. Magic that is powerful and suitable for itself. And the fierceness of Harry's world is simply tailor-made for Li Feng, which is both a flame attribute and a dark side magic. Tom closed the wooden box to stop shaking. Li Huo is one of the few magic that can destroy Horcruxes. The person in front of him directly asks for Li Huo curse. He subconsciously goes to the point where the person in front of him wants to destroy himself. Thought, but glanced at a page of paper in Li Feng's hand, Tom understood that the other party had other means to kill himself. Considering that Li Feng hadn't killed his heart for the time being, Tom nodded slightly and said in a magical voice, "Yes, but how do you make me believe that you won't kill me afterwards?" Li Feng, who perceives that Tom is using some means to confuse himself, is a bit speechless. "You are a bit more tender than temptation than me." Shrugging his shoulders, Li Feng ignored Tom's little tricks and said, "That's your business. The big deal is that I will find someone to learn the fierce fire curse. You are not the only one who can do the fierce fire curse. I think most necromancer families who have passed on for many years have this kind of magic." "Right, like the Black family." After speaking, Li Feng looked at Tom in thought with interest, and smiled. "Remind you, I have many methods to kill you and torture you. For example, this space is actually attached to a different space in reality, without mine." Aloud, "Your parasitic notebook cannot be supplemented by external magic, so even if I do nothing, as long as you stay here, you can taste the taste of being obliterated by time. This kind of knowing will die, but there is nothing the taste of resistance." Throwing away the wooden box in his hand, Li Feng continued, "There is also the wooden box in my hand. I think you should understand what power it contains. Just leaking a little ability will be enough for you to feel comfortable." N.S. Li Feng ignores his bewitching behavior, coupled with the constant intimidation of the other party, which makes Tom gloomy. He has a stronger method of bewitching, but that requires a magic wand or prolonged contact with Li Feng. As for now, he admits that he cannot shake Li Feng. At the same time, Tom also guessed that Li Feng's goal is not just as simple as Li Huo. After all, Li Feng has said that there are many ways to learn Li Huo. He is not bad about himself, and since the other party is chatting with himself in a hidden and different space, it means that you have something that the other party needs, or something that cannot be discovered by others. But what else is there besides knowledge now? Does the other party want a remnant soul to be a servant? Or is it a remnant soul that can't even pour tea or water? It's not that the other party is idle and bored, and it's as simple as trying to find someone to chat in the middle of the night to relieve boredom. After thinking about it, Tom said hoarsely with a little guess, the magic I know is not just fierce. Is this guessing my purpose? Li Feng scratched his head, lamenting that this kind of tricky speech is really not suitable for him. After he took out the magic book and enlarged it and opened it, Li Feng held a quill in one hand and said, let's talk about the spell first, and talk about the details of the spell. Li Feng, who was afraid that Tom would set himself up, said half intimidated and half seduced, when the spell is recorded, I will show it to Dumbledore. By the way, do you want to see the technique of resurrection? I can let you see half of it first. I'll show you the next half when I learn how to be fierce. Tom's face stiffened when he heard that he was resurrected. Tom knew a lot of ways to talk about resurrection, but he wouldn't mind knowing more about one way of resurrection. Originally, he was still considering whether to use Li Huo's non-discriminatory characteristics to destroy Li Feng, but now, Tom feels that he should first teach Li Huo curse to the opponent, and wait for the opponent's resurrection skills to be discussed. For a long time, Tom, who had become more transparent without a source of magic power, finally taught Li Feng the magic and precautions of Li Huo. Li Feng did not break his words. After recording the Li Huo curse, he quickly turned the magic book to the page of the resurrected corpse, handed it to Tom to check. Tom's eyes jumped slightly to watch Li Feng cover the left half of the page with his big hand, only revealing the revival technique of the right half of the book. If it weren't for the means to deal with Li Feng, he really wanted to step on Li Feng's face and ask, this is your mouth. Half of it, half of the sentence that you can't see even a complete sentence. Li Feng didn't care what Tom thought, anyway, this was half of his mouth, or half of Tom's rebuttal could not be tolerated. Li Feng looked at the resentful Tom with an expression of love to see, and said, no. Then you go back to your notebook and I will take you out of the mirror space. Had it not been for Li Feng's persecution, Tom would never have thought of showing up and chatting with Li Feng with his mouth. After all, hiding in a notebook and using writing means to chat is completely different from the magic consumed by getting out of the notebook. So when he heard that he could leave the mirror space to replenish his magic power, Tom could no longer care about only half of the resurrection technology, and he went back to his notebook without thinking about it. Anyway, he saw half of it for nothing, so he might as well go back to the notebook and rest. After crossing the portal, Li Feng simply moved his hands and feet to open the portal to the Broken Cauldron Bar. This night can be very busy for him, first inexplicably involved in the killing of the snake, then the busy basilisk, and finally asked Tom for advice on how to cast the fire curse. Now, when Li Feng returned to the room, he could finally relax his mind. He was too tired to take off his clothes, and fell asleep directly under the quilt roar. This sleep was the next afternoon, until Li Feng's stomach couldn't bear that his owner didn't eat for a day, and his indifferent stomach began to be boring, and Li Feng had to open his sleepy eyes, rubbing his stomach, and said, Clay Cut, give me something to eat, I feel like I can eat a dragon. Yes, boss. Creature, who had already prepared a table of abundant food, quickly placed the food on the desk and said, Boss, the money you gave me to buy ingredients has been exhausted. The evil spirit reborn Li Feng's mouth was filled with food, and he said slurredly, I'll give you some more later. When we sell the basilisk, we will have enough money to support our lives. Creature returned Snakestooth to Li Feng and said, Boss, I have contacted several buyers for you, but they don't want people to know that they bought the basilisk corpse. I want to talk to you privately, and let me pass it on. In one sentence, when will you take the basilisk away from Hogwarts for them to see? Li Feng thought for a while. I will confirm the buyer first, then I will use the portal to deliver the goods directly to the designated location, so that no one knows who the buyer is. As night came, Li Feng, wearing an all-black cloak, took a cup and a golden wildflower on his chest, opening the portal to Hogsmeade Village. After crossing the portal, Li Feng, led by Creature, walked into the Pig's Head Bar, a conversation place designated by the buyer with the highest bid for the basilisk. At first, Li Feng wondered why he was still talking in a crowded place like a bar because he was clearly asking for a secret transaction. Until Creature told Li Feng that hiding his face in a Pig's Head Bar was a very fashionable thing, where most of the guests were with a hood or a veil. It can be said that as long as you dress yourself up, no one will recognize anyone. In this regard, Li Feng said that he couldn't understand some weird behaviors in this world, and he had to hide his identity after drinking some alcohol. Is this afraid of his wife going into the bar in the middle of the night and pulling her ears? At the same time, Li Feng thought for a long time and couldn't understand why Creature asked him to bring his own cup. I never heard that he would bring his own cup when he went to a bar to drink. What's the difference between having a meal in a restaurant and being asked to bring his own seasoning? How do you drip if there is no salt in your house? Walking into the narrow and dirty bar, Li Feng's first impression of the environment inside the bar was not good. There was only one small and dirty room in the entire bar, and the air was full of a strong smell of sheep, if it weren't for Li Feng likes to eat it. Lamb, accustomed to this kind of lamb smelt, I guess I had to kneel and vomit when I entered the bar. Frowning, Li Feng looked at a few rough wooden tables. Although there were some candles on the table, the light was still dim. Li Feng guessed sitting at such a dim wine table. It is estimated that the person sitting opposite and drinking with him is a man. Women can't see clearly. There is also a thick layer of ash on the floor and bar counter, especially the cup on the wine cabinet. Li Feng even saw a thick ash accumulated in the cup. It is no exaggeration to say that the original one was 400 milliliters. My cup can only be filled with 300 milliliters of wine now, because the remaining volume is occupied by dust. This is not drinking. Drinking dust is almost the same. Li Feng touched his cup and said silently to Creature, "You asked me to bring my own cup because I was afraid that I might drink too much dust and cause indigestion." Creature blinked his eyes and nodded silently. This is one of the reasons. Perhaps Li Feng came a little early, and there was still some time before the agreed time. Creature walked into the bar and looked around and said, "Boss, Mr. Horace Slughorn has not come yet." Li Feng frowned, reluctantly found a dusty corner to sit down, ordered a glass of butterbeer, and waited for the buyer to attend the appointment. If Li Feng remembers correctly, Horace Slughorn is a bald old man in the fat world. He is greedy for pleasure and vanity in character. He likes to associate with successful and important people, but he is not a bad person in his bones. The reason why Li Feng had an impression of Horace Slughorn was that this guy was Harry Potter's potions teacher in the 6th grade, and he was able to independently make the elixir of fortune, and he didn't care about it. The Fu Ling Ji is a potion maker and local tyrant given to students as a reward. The Fuling potion is a kind of peculiar little potion, and one sip will bring good luck to the user, so the alias is also called Lucky Potion. In fact, the Fuling agent can only greatly increase the user's ability in all aspects within 12 hours, and ultimately feel that everything goes well, not really bringing luck. But this effect alone is enough for Li Feng's eyes, so when Li Feng squandered Hawking Gallon in Diagon Alley, it was not that he never thought of buying a bottle of Fuling potion, but the production process of this thing was too cumbersome, which led to the market. The Fuling agent is too scarce, or was snapped up as soon as it appeared. Like this kind of potion that is priceless and marketless, Li Feng may not buy it when he has a lot of Jinjiang. Unless Li Feng squats in front of the magic drug store with his heart, he may one day be able to buy it. Fu Ling agent. In view of Slughorn's potion production level and the collection of potions, Li Feng still values this transaction. It is mainly that Li Feng wants to ask Slughorn, in his private collection of potions, there is no magic augmentation potion. If the other party has this potion, Li Feng doesn't mind using the basilisk to exchange it, even if he adds some weight. He has to change to the potion, such as writing spells such as portal or mirror space on the exchange list. After all, compared with your own strength, what are these things? As long as he has the strength, Li Feng dares to rob some gods in the world. After taking a sip of inferior butterbeer, Li Feng said that this thing is called wine. It's obviously a sweet and hot drink. After hardly swallowing the butterbeer in his mouth, Li Feng ordered Creature to pour the butterbeer and replace it with a glass of vodka or other spirits. When Li Feng noticed that a person who was also wearing a black cloak came in at the entrance of the bar, he couldn't see his face. Wearing a golden wildflower necromancer on his chest, Li Feng lowered his head and asked in a low voice, "Creature, is that the one we are waiting for at the door?" Creature looked up and nodded. Slughorn also noticed the golden yellow wildflowers on Li Feng's chest when Li Feng paid attention to himself. He walked quickly to Li Feng, looked at Creature and said to Li Feng with his throat, "Hello, you are Os. Mr. Ding." Li Feng nodded and motioned to the other person to sit down, and said in a low voice, "Yes, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Slughorn." Slughorn glanced at the dusty seat, looked around nervously, then patted his wallet to indicate that he had brought the money, shook his head slightly and said, "No, let me see the basilisk's body. If satisfied, we will trade on the spot." Li Feng shrugged and stood up and said, "I can't carry such a big basilisk with me." Pointing to the door of the bar, Li Feng continued, "I will take you to the place where the basilisk is stored now." Slughorn frowned and thought about it. This was different from what he thought. Originally, he thought that the two of them completed the transaction in the bar, and then went back to each house to find their own mothers. He didn't expect that Li Feng could not carry it with him. Basilisk. However, Slughorn thought he still had some strength, and he was not afraid of Li Feng's tricks just in case he was still carrying some potions. He nodded and said, "As the basilisk in Hogsmeade Village." Li Feng smiled mysteriously as he walked out of the bar, and said vaguely, "No, no, you will understand when you come with me." After a while, Li Feng led Slughorn to a corner and opened the portal to the basilisk's secret room. Through the aperture of the portal, Slughorn looked at the huge and fresh basilisk in the portal with surprise, but considering the strange portal magic, Slughorn motioned Li Feng to cross the portal first. Knowing that Slughorn was worried about his disadvantage, he shook his head slightly and crossed the portal and said, "Mr. Slughorn, you don't have to worry." Before Li Feng's words were finished, Dumbledore's voice came from the secret room, "Good evening, Mr. Austen and Slughorn." Hearing Dumbledore's voice, he stepped across the portal Slughorn and opened his cloak first, and said with a little surprise and confusion, "Dumbledore. Did you also come to buy the basilisk corpse?" Li Feng was a little embarrassed when he saw Dumbledore. After all, he was neither a Hogwarts student nor a professor. He was strictly speaking an alien intruder. If Dumbledore cruelly knocked him down on the spot, Li Feng would really have nowhere to complain. The most important thing is that Dumbledore hadn't made it clear at the beginning that when he saw him at Hogwarts, he would treat him as if he hadn't seen him, which made Li Feng somewhat square. While maintaining the mana of the portal so that Li Feng could escape at any time, he smiled awkwardly and politely again, and said, "Good evening, Professor, why are you going out for a walk in the middle of the night?" Dumbledore smiled at Li Feng and said, "Snape told me about how you protected him and Professor McGonagall last night so that they could let go of their restraints and kill the basilisk." Dang said. Bledo looked at the body of the basilisk and continued, "Please forgive the curiosity of an old man. I have only seen basilisk creatures in books. I have never seen them in reality. When I learned that Hogwarts had the basilisk, I was even more curious and unable to fall asleep, because I had a poor sleep quality, so on the first night when I resumed my position as principal, I couldn't help but come to see the basilisk." After speaking, Dumbledore looked at Slughorn and said, "Old friend, the consciousness that listened to you just now, did you come to buy the basilisk?" Slughorn frowned and nodded, and said, "The news I got was that a house elf was telling his owner that he wanted to sell the basilisk. Considering that those who can have house elf are all aristocrats with status, no, it would be a liar, so I thought the basilisk belonged to this Mr. Austen." Speaking of this, Slughorn looked at Dumbledore and said, "But listening to your consciousness just now, this basilisk seems to belong to Hogwarts." Dumbledore turned his head and thought, saying that the basilisk belongs to Hogwarts is not a wise choice. After all, Hogwarts is a school, and what does a very dangerous basilisk want to raise on a campus? The Ministry of Magic has long wanted to intervene in Hogwarts. Once it publicly says that the basilisk belongs to Hogwarts, doesn't this mean that the Ministry has an excuse to be stationed in Hogwarts? Who knows if there are basilisks or other dangerous creatures in Hogwarts? Thinking of this, Dumbledore blinked at Li Feng and said, "No, it's an intruder, but this is Austen, Snape, and McGonagall's trophy. Snape has taken his share. But McGonagall didn't take her share of the trophy, so." Dumbledore pointed to Li Feng and said, "This Mr. Austen is only half the owner of the basilisk." Li Feng, Ma Dan, Lao Dang, this is the rhythm of using McGonagall as an excuse to ask me to benefit. Seeing the goodness of the hand fly away halfway, Li Feng, feeling heartbroken, motioned to Dumbledore to come to the side for a few words with his eyes. Dumbledore, who understood what Li Feng wanted to express, nodded slightly, signaled that Slughorn could carefully observe the goods he wanted to buy, and walked to the portal with Li Feng. Before Dumbledore could speak, Li Feng pointed to the portal and said quietly, "I used the portal to exchange the ownership of the basilisk with Professor McGonagall." Dumbledore, who was silent, looked at Li Feng quietly, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. As for what Dumbledore wanted, Li Feng could probably guess something in his heart. One is the safe and comfortable mirror space that Professor McGonagall has personally experienced, and the other is Snape telling Dumbledore about Tom's notebook and seeing Tom appear and disappear for a while. Dumbledore, who already knew the existence of Horcruxes, would inevitably think about his notebooks, especially Ginny, the victim who was controlled by Tom for a period of time. As the principal, Dumbledore would definitely take care of Ginny's mental health. By the way, ask some information. Dumbledore would most likely know that the former owner of that notebook was Tom, who was also Voldemort in his school days. Knowing Dumbledore's dissatisfaction with the transaction, Li Feng thought for a while, and said, "Don't go too far, I will teach McGonagall too." As soon as Li Feng's words fell, Dumbledore hesitation, who saw that this was Li Feng's bottom line, said with a smile, "I have no right to call the shots for McGonagall, but I will pass your transaction to McGonagall." Hearing that Dumbledore did not continue to ask for his notebook, Li Feng was relieved in his heart and couldn't help but roll his eyes, and said with contempt, "Why don't you say that you can't be the master of McGonagall? You don't want my spell, I exchanged it with you before. Are you not satisfied enough? That thing is the boss of your help." Dumbledore did not deny the effect of the magic eye. He thought he could find hidden magic items in a pile of debris, but he wanted to find out which item was a Horcrux in the pile of magic items, which embarrassed him. So, let's not talk about the other effects of the Dharma Eye, just seeing the Horcrux is enough for Dumbledore to feel comfortable. This is like in the original book Voldemort hides the locket of one of the Horcruxes in a cave on an isolated island, and puts the locket into the bottom of a container, and then uses a spell to pour some into the container and let people drink it. It's not as good as the potion that feels like death. You can only get the locket after drinking the potion. Later, Regulus, who decided to change his evil, brought Kreacher to the cave, drank the potion by himself and asked Kreacher to take the locket and leave, while he put the fake locket in the container and said goodbye to the world. It's a pity that Dumbledore didn't know what Regulus did. Later, Dumbledore took Harry to the cave with him. After drinking the potion, he discovered that it was a fake. It can be seen that Dumbledore is indeed unable to determine which magical item is a Horcrux, but with the magic eye, it is different. It is estimated that Dumbledore will leave without looking up after looking at the fake locket. Everyone knows that this stuff is fake. Who would drink any potions, get a nervous convulsion, or just do nothing, want to know if the potion that Voldemort configures is salty or bland. But then again, the locket was in Dumbledore's hands, and the fool went into the cave to find some Horcrux. Seeing that Dumbledore didn't mention the notebook, Li Feng, who had just put his heart back in his stomach, suddenly heard Dumbledore say quietly, "Then what do you want to say about the notebook?" Li Feng, notebook, you really don't care about it? Without waiting for Li Feng to figure out how to answer, Dumbledore continued with a smile, "I learned something from Ginny's mouth, so let's make it clear, who are you going to exchange with the mysterious man's Horcrux? Or mean what do you want?" If Li Feng thinks he can't defeat Snape, he is sure to escape from the joint hands of Snape and Professor McGonagall by relying on the mirror space and the portal. It's just that now standing in front of him sternly is Deng Wu, who is more powerful than Snape, especially since the distance between the two standing close enough to ignore, Li Feng doesn't think he has a chance to escape. With a helpless face, Li Feng glanced at the portal close to him, and closed the portal helplessly to show that he didn't want to run away. He said, "To be honest, I'm not thinking about changing my laptop for the time being, but you don't worry, I'm not interested in returning this stuff to Voldemort. In my eyes, that guy is a patient who has been deeply infected with the rabies virus and has serious mania." Dumbledore shook his head slightly and said, "But I don't worry about leaving the notebook with you. After all, your strength. Maybe you don't know that the mysterious man's Horcrux has the ability to confuse the soul, and you." Before Dumbledore had finished speaking, Li Feng took out a wooden box from his pocket and threw it to himself, and motioned to open it. Dumbledore glanced at Li Feng and slowly opened the wooden box. In an instant, Dumbledore perceived that a majestic magic power radiated from the fake angel feathers. What is more important is that these majestic magic powers give people a feeling of comfort and tranquility. Dumbledore, who understood what Li Feng wanted to express, closed the wooden box and returned it to Li Feng, saying, Perhaps you can rely on it to resist the enchantment of mysterious people for a short time, but for a long time. You still want to talk about what you want. It also allows me to find what you all desire in advance." Seeing that Dumbledore was determined to ask Tom's notebook, Li Feng scratched his head, glanced at Slughorn in the distance, and said in an uncertain tone, "I originally discussed with Slughorn. Can you use the basilisk and my spells to exchange some magic boost potions that can increase your magic power, even if you have some clues, but now that you insist on a notebook, then I will use the notebook to replace it with you." Dumbledore was stunned, as if looking at Li Feng with a bit of contempt, and said, "Do you know how precious the magic boosting potion is? Even those big families that have passed on for thousands of years may not be able to come up with a bottle, even if there is a combination. I agree to exchange with you. A basilisk that is alive and obediently obedient can't be exchanged for half a bottle, let alone a dead basilisk, but..." Looking at Slughorn, who was spinning around the basilisk, Dumbledore turned his head and looked at Li Feng with a look of luck, and said, "Slughorn does have a magic booster potion in his hand. Regarding the importance of the notebook, let me get you a bottle from Slughorn, but the basilisk must belong to Slughorn. As for your spells, Slughorn is fascinated by it. It's not a spell, so you should keep the spell, and I will come out with the rest of the supplies, which is considered a trading notebook with you." After speaking, Dumbledore turned to Slughorn and said to Li Feng behind him, "You avoid it first. I have some personal matters to talk to Slughorn, and I will officially start teaching you magic later." Li Feng nodded, turned and opened the portal back to the Broken Cauldron Bar, ready to pack Kreacher and his luggage back to the secret room. As for what Dumbledore asked Slughorn to talk about, Li Feng guessed that Dumbledore just wanted to know. Where did Tom learn how to make Horcruxes? After a long time, Li Feng, who had finished checking out and packed his luggage, felt that Dumbledore should also finish talking with Slughorn, stretched out his hand to open the portal to the secret room, and took Kreacher to prepare to settle in the secret room. After entering the secret room, Li Feng found that the bodies of Slughorn and the basilisk had disappeared. Even Dumbledore, who was supposed to be waiting for Li Feng in the secret room, disappeared. To be honest, Dumbledore's hard-line attitude towards the notebook bankrupted many of Li Feng's plans. The most direct one was the plan to learn magic from Tom. The only relief was that the most aspiring curse was already in hand, and what was lacking was encountered in the actual casting. Who should I ask for advice? Seeing that there was no Dumbledore in the secret room, Li Feng thought for a while, and said to Kreacher, who was busy tidying up the secret room, "Kreacher, help me get to a certain potions classroom in Hogwarts, from the bookcase or the cabinet. Look for this textbook signed by the Half-Blood Prince, a textbook on how to make potions." After thinking about it, Li Feng added, "I remember this textbook is a bit old. If you really don't know which one I'm looking for, then bring back all the textbooks about potions." After speaking, Li Feng opened the mirror space, ready to squeeze Tom once while the notebook was still in his hands. As soon as he entered the mirror space, Li Feng hurriedly held the wooden box and wrote in his notebook, "Come out." Tom, who had recovered a bit of magic power, felt the energy radiation of the pseudo-angel feather speechlessly and helplessly always exposed ahead from his notebook. No way, Tom's magic power is only so little left. It would be good to be able to phantom ahead. It is estimated that next time Li Feng summons him in such a hurry, he can only phantom his upper lip and lower lip for communication. Tom squatted his innocent face and said quietly, "What's the matter?" Li Feng rubbed his hands, pretending to open the wooden box, and threatened, "What kind of magic are you most proud of? Give it to me." Tom was stunned, feeling that Li Feng was a little anxious about the question this time. He squinted and asked, "Did something happen?" Which so much nonsense. Li Feng opened most of the wooden box, letting the pseudo-angel feather weaken Tom's willpower as much as possible, and said in a tone containing strange mana fluctuations, "Answer my question." Knowing that Li Feng is casting spells on him, but his own magic is not much, and he didn't see Li Feng holding a magic wand to relax his vigilance, it was too late and unable to make an effective means of resistance. When he regained consciousness from the trance, he had already seen it. Li Feng grinned and quickly recorded something in the magic book. With little magic left, Tom, whose head was almost transparent, looked tremblingly at the magic book, and the pupils in his eyes shrank. I saw that what Li Feng recorded was the kind of magic he was most proud of, and that was also the Dark Mark, magic he used to control and restrict Death Eaters. In the movie, when Voldemort touches the Dark Mark, other Death Eaters, Dark Mark, will also feel it. At this time, they will immediately appear next to Voldemort and obey the instructions. When a Death Eater touches and burns on himself with the Dark Mark on his left arm, Voldemort could also feel the call and apparate to his side. Li Feng did not expect that Voldemort during his student days would actually have the Black Mark, and through Tom's elaboration, Li Feng understood that the role of the Dark Mark is not just a function like a telephone in the movie, it is more like a slave contract. It can firmly control the Death Eaters when Voldemort is strong. Definitely, if Voldemort is weak, the effect of the Dark Mark will also be greatly reduced. However, Li Feng doesn't care about these shortcomings. He still has the Devil's slave contract in his hand. As long as Li Feng spends a period of time researching and integrating the Dark Mark and the slave contract, it is not impossible to create unique control methods. In the mirrored space, Tom seemed to understand his own destiny. Just as Li Feng was about to release the seduction spell on him again, he hid in his notebook and refused to show up. In this regard, Li Feng was also helpless. If he killed Tom, Li Feng said that it was okay and that it was easy to do. However, after killing Tom, how could Dumbledore believe that the notebook is a Horcrux? Li Feng expressed his uncertainty. Maybe Dumbledore, Leto would also suspect that Li Feng used a shabby notebook to fool him. No way, Li Feng can only form a stalemate with Tom in the notebook. When Dumbledore reappeared in the secret room, Li Feng, who had not recorded a few magic, returned to reality with a grieved expression. He reluctantly handed the notebook to Dumbledore and said, "I feel like I've lost a lot of money." Dumbledore took the notebook and handed Li Feng a bottle of baby fist file-size glass gourd, and said, "But I think you have made a lot of money, if it weren't for Slughorn's recent obsession with using basilisks to make potions. To enhance his reputation, he would not exchange the magic-boosting potion to me so easily." Li Feng took the glass gourd and placed it in front of him by the light of the fire, watching the dreamlike scene in the potion. I saw that the small gourd seemed to contain a Milky Way galaxy, and the light blue potion was shining with little lights, and these light spots slowly revolved around the brightest star in the center. Li Feng vaguely glanced at the notebook in Dumbledore's hand, and then looked at such a beautiful magic-boosting potion. He felt a little reluctant to drink it. After appreciating it for a while, he reluctantly asked, "Professor, is there an instruction manual for this thing? How can I use the potion just for me? Drink it directly or use it in the bath, or eat it with the dipping sauce and bread?" Hearing Li Feng's nonsense, Dumbledore, who was studying the notebook with his magic wand, almost staggered and patted the notebook in his hand at Li Feng. Dumbledore looked at Li Feng thoughtfully. After recalling Li Feng's message, he suddenly understood what he said. "Why, nonsense is your way to divert my attention and ease my mood." Li Feng, who had a hippie smile, looked stiff. Seeing this, Dumbledore raised his notebook with a smile, and asked in a gentle voice, "It looks like you have communicated with Tom. Tell me about the deal you made with Tom. I'm very surprised. Curious, what kind of common language a necromancer from outside and the Dark Lord of our world have in common?" The expression gradually solidified on Li Feng's face, knowing that Dumbledore didn't have a smile on his face now, and he was gentle, but he knew that if he didn't say it clearly, it might be possible that Dumbledore could imprison him. Li Feng understands why Dumbledore treats him differently when he comes into contact with Tom. If ordinary people contact Tom, the consequence is nothing more than being bewitched and obeying Tom's orders. It's amazing that there are more Death Eaters in this world. An ordinary Death Eater, Dumbledore could not take it seriously. But Li Feng is different. First of all, Li Feng comes from other civilizations. Unfortunately, in the eyes of Dumbledore, he is a guy who likes magic trading. Who knows that Li Feng will not use any special spells to trade with Tom? When Dumbledore faced the familiar Tom, he did not have full confidence in destroying the opponent. Once Tom mastered a new and unknown spell, he didn't think he could immediately come up with a cracking spell when facing these spells, or even whether he could crack it. The existence of curses is always a problem. So for the sake of peace in the magical world, why not be charged with murder? Is it true that Dumbledore can't kill? Thinking of this, Li Feng thought silently, "I hope that old dang is really as in the original work. Let me be lenient in confession and strict in resistance." While preparing the spell secretly, Li Feng took a deep breath and slowly exhaled it. With a bitter expression on his face, he took out the magic book from his pocket, turned to the page where the spell was recorded, and said, I don't know if you perceive mine magic is biased towards darkness, but the magic that I have been learning is biased towards white magic. It is not that I don't want to learn black magic, but there is no source to learn. Dumbledore looked at the curse, frowned and said, what kind of magic did you use to exchange the curse with Tom? Li Feng shook his head and smiled. Remember my evaluation of Voldemort. Mad dogs and maniacs. Although Dumbledore felt that Li Feng's description was not very appropriate, it still made him amused to describe Voldemort in this way. I remember you said you wouldn't trade with him. Yes, Li Feng said with a shrug. So I threatened Tom with that feather and asked him to teach me magic, but... With some regrets, Li Feng said quietly, but you insist on returning the behavior of the notebook gave me no time to learn more magic. Dumbledore looked at Li Feng earnestly, trying to make sure whether Li Feng told himself the truth. After a meeting, he took the notebook back into his arms and said, let's start our magic journey. By the way, just drink the potion to increase the increase. Potion, your magic power will increase rapidly in the near future. As for how much you increase, it depends on your originally aptitude. Li Feng shook the potion in his hand, took out the stopper, and poured it into his mouth. After drinking, he said, drink too fast, I didn't taste the salty taste, can I have some more? I feel that the amount is too little, not enough. Quench your thirst. Dumbledore ignored Li Feng's babble, took out a book of Introduction to Magic he had compiled, and said, I don't have much time to teach you. I temporarily set it at the after-dinner time every Saturday. Passing the textbook to Li Feng, Dumbledore continued, although you have never learned magic in our world, I think magic is magic. Some places are connected, so my teaching speed will be a bit faster. I hope you take notes. If you don't understand, you can ask me every Saturday night. With a smile, Li Feng took the Introduction to Magic with both hands, and said respectfully, thank you, I hope I am the student with the fastest learning speed since your teaching career. Dumbledore nodded and smiled. He is also the only one who has become my student in adulthood. From the origin of magic to the development of magic in modern times, Dumbledore explained in detail the principle of releasing magic while demonstrating magic. Until the early morning, Dumbledore couldn't help but breathe and said, I'll be here today, after all. Is getting older, but you can stay up late without the energy you have. Hearing the end of today's magic teaching, Li Feng still bowed to Dumbledore and said, thank you. Dumbledore received Li Feng's gift with peace of mind and smiled and said, yes, Lupin's letter asked me to ask, he has already prepared some materials for rebuilding locomotives. When will you learn from him the technology of rebuilding locomotives? Quote. Li Feng thought for a while, and felt that it was a pity to leave Hogwarts, a treasure of feng shui. In addition, he had already used the magic power boosting potion, which made him want to stay in an environment with high magic power to improve his strength. He said, after resting tonight, tomorrow during the day I will take Lupin to the secret room to teach me. Dumbledore heard what Li Feng meant, that he did not want to leave Hogwarts, but he had no objection. He nodded and said, yes, tomorrow I will pick up Lupin by the way and help me convey a word to Sirius so that he will pay attention to safety in the near future. Li Feng was stunned, and then he thought that the basilisk thing had come to the ground, and it was time for Azkaban's back Potter Hagrid to be released. And those Ministry of Magic staff who went to Azkaban with the release certificate will most likely find that Sirius has escaped from prison. It is estimated that the portrait of the wanted Sirius will soon be plastered in the streets and alleys. At this time, Sirius will go out and look for death. After Li Feng nodded and signaled that he would convey the words, he breathed out and pretended to sleep, and watched Dumbledore leave the secret room with his own eyes. After a while, Li Feng, who was certain that Dumbledore would not return, ordered Kreacher to seal the entrance to the chamber, grinning and portraying Merlin's magic ring with his big mouth exposing his posterior molars. When the spirit body came out of the orifice to meditate, Li Feng had already analyzed the principle of the magic booster potion. Magic or energy is like food. How much you can eat depends on how much food your stomach can hold. You can only continue to eat after digesting and converting the food into energy and storing it in your body. Normally, 3 meals a day are basically dead. Anyway, unless it is a big stomach king with outstanding qualifications, who can eat a lot of food at one time, allowing the body to absorb more energy. The magic booster potion is like a digestive tablet, which can speed up digestion and convert food into energy faster, allowing you to accelerate the speed of food intake from the side, and have the ability of a big stomach king for a period of time. Li Feng, who had eaten energy for a night, was Li Feng who meditated for a night. He had to stop practicing until he felt that the meditation would not only increase the magic power, but would damage the foundation. After the spirit body returned to the body, Li Feng immediately hid the magic ring of Merlin. Describing Merlin's magic ring is simple and quick for Li Feng now, but again, with Dumbledore's insight, I can understand the principle after just a few glances. Li Feng doesn't want Dumbledore to be cheap, as the other party thinks. It's not impossible to learn, just use resources in exchange. He is now a poor ghost who is about to cut off food and lacks any supplies. After hiding the magic ring of Merlin, Li Feng asked Creature to prepare food while closing his eyes to perceive his own soaring magic power. After a while, although Li Feng sitting at the dining table forcibly resisted the yelling desire, the smile on his face couldn't help, and the corners of his mouth were straight and grinned like a convulsion from time to time. Creature on the side saw that Li Feng laughed when he was chewing food. He had to guess. Look at the same symptoms as when a sheep has a seizure. It is estimated that the owner is sick, and the illness is not mild. To be honest, this is Li Feng's happiest day since crossing. Think about the fact that Li Feng can only traverse the magical otherworld before, although he has obtained the traversal plugin. As a low-powered rookie, how much is the difference between Otherworld and the dangerous Marvel world? It's not that he was run over to death by someone passing by at any time. Therefore, Li Feng's mentality has always been to be cautious, but now Angel uses the magic boosting potion. Li Feng has personally experienced what is the speed of strength improvement visible to the naked eye, and what is a hard night is equal to the achievement that can only be achieved in the past month. After breakfast, Li Feng sat slumped at the dining table and burped, rubbing his cramped cheeks with a smile, and ordered Creature to prepare a quill for translation. Worried about what nerves Creature would make when he returned to Black House, Li Feng warned, "Creature, remember who you are now." Creature froze, lowered his head and said, "Creature understands that Creature is a house elf belonging to the boss, and it is my duty to serve the boss." Seeing Creature understood his consciousness, Li Feng got up and opened the portal. After crossing the portal to the restaurant in Black's old house, Li Feng silently watched Sirius and Lu Pingyuan sitting across from each other, as if looking in a mirror while holding up a glass of water to drink. The other simultaneously sent the bread to stuffed in the mouth. I don't know why, watching the two sitting opposite each other like a couple, with expressions and simultaneous eating movements, a question popped up in Li Feng's mind: one can become a wolf and the other can become a dog. These are the two. Dude, if a man and a woman who love each other, what should their offspring be called? When Sirius saw the portal, he knew that it was Li Feng was coming. He hurriedly stuffed the last bite of bread into his mouth, and spitting at Li Feng with excitement, "You despicable thief, you dare to step into my house." Li Feng glanced at each other, and subconsciously stepped back a few steps to avoid the saliva sticking to his clothes. After confirming that Sirius did not have a magic wand in his hand, Li Feng scratched his head and asked Lupin, who was about to watch the show, "What's wrong with him?" "Rabies." Lu Ping's eyes twitched, pointed to the floor at Li Feng, and walked to Sirius, who was getting more emotional, in case Sirius couldn't stand the stimulus, and rushed towards Li Feng. Li Feng first glanced at the floor in confusion, and suddenly said, "Jin Zhilong in the basement." After spreading his hands, Li Feng looked at Sirius with innocent eyes and said, "No wonder I am. You said that I can take as much as I can. Since I have the ability to empty it, you can't blame me." Sirius heard Li Feng speak to him in a, as it should, tone, and pointed to Li Feng's nose angrily and shouted, "Duel, I want to fight you." A man who doesn't even have a necromancer with a wand, is Li Shengfeng in his eyes. Li Feng immediately held a basketball file-size fireball with his right hand, and hooked his finger to Sirius with his left hand, arrogantly returning, "Come on, who is afraid of anyone, since you don't even have a magic wand? To be fair, let's come." A duel without a wand. Sirius, Lupin. The two silently looked at each other and then looked at the fireball on Li Feng's palm. What's special? Now who doesn't know who's old? Li Feng is not a person in this world originally. It makes no difference to him whether he has a magic wand, and Sirius, without a magic wand, what is the difference between ordinary people? This is called a duel. This is looking for abuse. Although he knew that the two would not really fight, after all, Li Feng knew that Sirius had Dumbledore as his backer, and Sirius also knew that he did not have a magic wand in his hand to defeat Li Feng, but Lupin still felt his brain aches while holding his forehead. Lupin, who was afraid that the two would continue to quarrel, pressed Sirius on the chair and turned to Li Feng and said, "Mr. Austin, I have prepared the materials for remodeling the locomotive, but you need to solve the problem of the venue." Originally, Lupin thought of teaching Li Feng in Black's old house, but now that Sirius and Li Feng's posture, it would be nice to have a quiet rest in the old house. As for teaching, let's save the time. Fortunately, Li Feng didn't want to stay in the old house of Black to practice locomotive modification skills, and said, "The site problem is easy to solve. The place I live in now is very good, spacious and quiet enough." Looking at Sirius, Li Feng Shanshan said, "When will you ask me to copy books from the Black family's collection?" When Li Feng was still thinking about the books in the basement, Sirius said angrily, "Aren't you free to go in and out of my basement? Ask me why these are, and let Creature copy it by himself." After finishing speaking, Sirius turned around like a pity, not looking at Li Feng. Think about it, although he promised that Li Feng would let the other party copy books after confirming Dwarf's information, but he hasn't confirmed it yet. He has already sneaked into the basement and made a copy. Anyone would be upset. As far as the information given by Li Feng is correct, if it is false information, Sirius said that he is not the one who can suffer. It's good to be able to copy the book. As for Sirius' attitude, Li Feng shrugged indifferently, turned around and handed the magic book to Creature, and said, "Copy everything as soon as possible, those materials that cannot be copied temporarily. Make a mark and continue to copy when I am strong enough in the future." After finishing the order, Li Feng took a suitcase depicting the non-marking stretch curse from Lupin. For some reason, Li Feng suddenly thought that some great god in this world had a suitcase that looked like the one in front of him. The difference was that the suitcase is a zoo, and the space in the suitcase is large enough to park the aircraft carrier. I don't know if I can expand my carriage to park a sky mothership after I learn how to modify the car. After thinking about it, Li Feng patted the bulging box and said, "How many cars are these materials enough for me to rebuild?" "How many?" Lu Ping said silently, "Only enough for one. After all, according to your requirements, the material cost is not a small amount, plus you have emptied Sirius Jin Zilong, he doesn't have much money to come buy these materials. The non-marking expansion curse that expands the interior space of the car takes up most of the box space, and the remaining flight and stealth materials are just." Lupin glanced at Sirius and laughed. "Front, I can teach you how to modify a few things, only the most important engine part of a flying car. I don't understand the operating principle of the engine, so I can transform the engine into a magic drive. I can't do anything." Sirius studied, he was an expert in this field. As soon as Lu Ping's words fell, Li Feng saw Sirius look provocatively at him, his eyes full of meaning. "Come and beg me." Li Feng turned his head and thought for a while, then smiled. "Dumbledore asked me to tell you that the Ministry of Magic will find that you have escaped from Azkaban in the near future, so you still stay at home." Li Feng stretched out his hand to open the portal, with a mysterious smile, and said to Sirius, "You said that after the Ministry of Magic knew you had escaped, would you guess that you escaped to kill Harry? And for the safety of Harry, the Savior, you guess what radical methods the Ministry of Magic will use to hunt you down? Want me to ask Sirius to teach me how to transform a car? Don't even think about it, it's not like Dumbledore, who is afraid of whom." After the defamation, Li Feng ignored the silly Sirius and returned to the secret room with Lupin, who was thinking with squinting eyes. Across the portal, Lu Ping had been guessing what Li Feng meant by extreme, and asked thoughtfully, "What did you mean by just now? Do you see what will happen in the future?" Li Feng opened the suitcase, took the pieces of materials in his hands, and said, "It's not interesting, you will know at that time, as long as you know that Sirius will beg to teach me how to modify the car. Tell me, what do you plan to do when you know the situation of the little dwarf star?" Lu Ping thought for a while, and felt that Li Feng wanted to stay in Hogwarts with peace of mind to practice magic. If he saw Sirius, he would not hide anything. After all, Dumbledore was still watching. The occurrence of the basilisk incident in the school this year has caused many students and parents to panic. If there is a small dwarf incident recently, it is estimated that many students will transfer, so Dumbledore asked us to wait until the summer vacation when the small dwarf leaves school, or after the basilisk incident subsided. He was working on the Pettigrew. Lu Ping glanced at Li Feng and said faintly, I remember you called Roar professor before, so you knew I would come to Hogwarts to be a professor of black magic defense, didn't you? When I enter Hogwarts in the next semester, I will be able to protect Harry better, and I can greatly increase the success rate of the capture based on my understanding of Pettigrews. After all, we are not aiming to kill Pettigrews, but to catch him alive. Only by catching Dwarf alive and handing it over to the Ministry of Magic, can Sirius get rid of his guilt, and appear on the streets to enjoy the sunshine. When talking about handing Pettigrew to the Ministry of Magic, Lupin's face was obviously helpless and disgusted. Think about it. Back then, Sirius didn't even have an interrogation procedure, and he was thrown directly into a Madcabin. It was still 12 years old. In addition to the Ministry of Magic's attitude towards Dumbledore, as Dumbledore's iron rod, it's strange that Ping has a good face to the Ministry of Magic. Li Feng scratched his head. After a long time of trouble, is it back to the plot again? Is this a correction of the world? Lu Ping took out a rusty beetle car with no wheels from the suitcase. Li Feng said disgustedly, where did you get this scrap car? It was not picked up by the roadside. Lu Ping spread his hands, made a helpless move, and said, it's not bad to be able to pick up a car. I don't have the money to buy a new car for you to toss. While continuing to take out the materials from the suitcase, Lu Ping pretended to ask unconsciously, how do you think the Ministry of Magic will treat Pettigrew? The prerequisite to treat Pettigrew is that Pettigrew does not run. But, I think there is something in Lupin's words. Li Feng stroked his chin, and asked, what do you know about mini-dwarfs? Not little dwarf, Lupin said with a stiff movement, but the Ministry of Magic. I don't know what the laws of your world are, but in our world, little dwarf is a hero. After Lu Ping's explanation, Li Feng gave the Ministry of Magic a thumbs up speechlessly, it's really urinary. Obviously Pettigrew betrayed the Potter family and blamed Sirius on Sirius. At the same time, he fictitiously escaped under the guise of hunting Sirius. In the end, the Ministry of Magic felt that he was a hero and gave Pettigrew a Merlin First-Class medal. Now, the Ministry of Magic can't do anything about the little dwarf who has the Merlin First-Class medal, such as Veritaserum, before there is conclusive evidence. The problem is that the little dwarf knows that he can belch when he tells the truth. Truth be told, it's not over for Sirius who killed the Potter family. So Lupin now sometimes thinks like Sirius, hand it over to the Ministry of Magic, and kill the dwarf directly. Li Feng expressed his inability to do anything about Pettigrew, and he was not a political magnate, so he could allow the Ministry of Magic to throw Pettigrew into Azkaban directly. Could it be possible that Li Feng, as a magician from other universes, had a business meeting with the Ministry of Magic and asked the Ministry of Magic to punish the little dwarf star? Let's not say whether the Ministry of Magic believes in Li Feng or not, let's talk about what the other party will do after Li Feng's apparent identity. Either put Li Feng in a lunatic asylum, or reply to Li Feng's question with a large bottle of Veritaserum. If it is determined that Li Feng comes from another world, I guess afterwards, there will be a message off forgetting nothing, and then smiling and studying Li Feng's slices, and then announcing to the necromancers that a new world, a new journey, we're here. Lu Ping also knew that Li Feng was incapable of this. He just wanted to know the fate of Pettigrew with a little hope. Seeing Li Feng refused to answer his own questions, Lu Ping stopped asking more, so he asked himself urgently, and Li Feng again. He started to talk about a deal. He has been poor for several years and hasn't bought new clothes. He needs to live in Sirius's house to spend the day. Where did Jin Zilong ask questions? It's better to be careful when catching the dwarf and find out what is strong. The evidence. Since then, Li Feng's hard life has officially started. During the day, he learned from Lupin the craftsmanship of car modification, and at night he learned the basics of magic from Lupin. On Saturday, Lupin was able to pat his butt to indicate that he would take a day off, while Li Feng did. It was hard to learn, and ask Dumbledore about the questions accumulated during the week. It can be said that this period of time is both painful and happy for Li Feng. The pain was because Li Feng said that he was a scumbag, and the world was different with different rules. Some theories that were completely nonsense in Li Feng's view were truth in this world, which caused Li Feng to learn crafts and magic faster than he imagined. Happiness is because of the rapid advancement of strength, especially with the help of magic-boosting potions. Li Feng, who has just come to this world with only high-level magic power, waits for the students of Hogwarts to rush to the Hogwarts Express with their luggage, prepare when enjoying the happy time of the next summer vacation. Li Feng's total magic power has reached the total magic power that a normal necromancer should have. Definitely, after such a long period of time, the effect of the magic-boosting potion on how to guard against the sky should also end. The same end is also Dumbledore's teaching. In this regard, Li Feng, who has enjoyed the soaring strength, expressed his dissatisfaction with his desires, and was very unhappy, but he was helpless. After all, the magic-boosting potion was scarce than the blessing potion. In the words of Sirius, Li Feng could drink a bottle of magic booster potion in his life. It was his last life who jumped into the blessing potion and drowned. Only in this life will he be so lucky. If he wants to drink a bottle, he must be in Fulling. Soak in the agent for hundreds of years. On the first day of the Hogwarts holiday, while Snape had not left school, Li Feng ordered Kreacher to clean up the secret room and prepare a pot of tea, then let the spirit body float above the magic ring of Merlin. Compared with the past, today's secret room door is open. After a while, Snape's face was as straight as ever, wearing a large bat suit, and holding an invitation letter from Li Feng to the secret room. At the moment Snape stepped into the secret room, the spirit-shaped Li Feng and the other party nodded slightly to call roar, indicating that the other party could observe Merlin's magic ring up close, while he continued to meditate. Snape was stunned when he saw Li Feng's spiritual body, and after receiving the teacup handed by Kreacher, he circled and analyzed Merlin's magic circle with interest, especially to perceive the increase in magic power caused by Li Feng's meditation. The necromancer in this world does not have to say that he is meditating. The improvement of magic power depends on ability and taking various medicines. So compared to Merlin's magic circle, which is suspected to have already existed in this world, Snape is more interested in Li Feng's meditation. For a long time, Li Feng, who ended his meditation early, controlled the spirit body to return to the physical body, pointed to the magic ring of Merlin, and said, "How?" Snape looked at Merlin's magic ring, shook the invitation letter in his hand, and said, "These are the two methods you mentioned in your letter that can quickly improve your strength." Li Feng nodded, beckoned to Snape and said, "Ming will say it later, now you can enter the Merlin Oculus to feel its charm." Merlin, the magic ring. Merlin was not a fantasy character to Snape, but a real existence, and the other party had studied at Hogwarts. The college he attended was still the Slytherin he manages now. College. In Snape's mind, the magic circle that can be named after Merlin is not a popular commodity. The effect of the magic may be better than he thought, but he doesn't understand. When did the stingy Li Feng in his impression become more generous? This level of magic says trade is trade. When did your potions become so valuable? In fact, Li Feng used meditation or Merlin's magic ring to talk about trades. He was forced to do nothing. In addition to the magic knowledge of the world, he also wanted the knowledge of potions. For this reason, when he killed the basilisk, Li Feng even used Snape and McGonagall. After the seduction spell, the two professors were not fuel-efficient lamps, and they nodded in person and agreed to exchange knowledge for Li Feng's support. When the basilisk was killed, they turned their heads, so the two had already awakened from the seduction spell. It's strange that the two professors would admit that it was a deal that was tempted by someone to agree to it. McGonagall's refusal has made Li Feng distressed for a while, and Snape's refusal has made Li Feng regretful. You said he was so stupid at the beginning. After the temptation, you can directly use magic to get the two to sign the contract first and kill the snake is not perfect. So now he has to pay a higher price to learn the knowledge of potions from Snape. Confused, Snape walked into Merlin's Oculus. After a while, Snape, who knew how useful Merlin's Oculus was, said sternly, "Why are you looking for me? If I remember correctly, you have been with that stupid the wolf is learning magic, and Dumbledore, his potions are not worse than mine." Li Feng spread his hands and said helplessly, "Dumbledore's teaching is over. After all, people are very busy. As for Lupin, it's not that he doesn't want to teach me, but how does his potions compare to you? Since I want to learn potions, why don't I do it in one step? Isn't it better to learn from a potion master like you? After speaking, Li Feng snapped his fingers and said, "Creature, bring the Half-Blood Prince's textbook." Hearing Li Feng's words that both complimented himself and looked down on Lupin's potions, Snape said he was very happy. When he heard Li Feng say, "Half-Blood Prince," the corners of his mouth cocked slightly. The Half-Blood Prince claimed to be acquired by himself when he committed a second crime in his student days. Now he has become a mature old man. He suddenly heard the prince's name, and his face was somewhat embarrassed. Li Feng took the textbook from Creature and threw it to Snape, and said, "This is your textbook. It is a wonderful note. This makes me more sure to learn from you the idea of potions every time I see this textbook." Snape looked at Merlin's oculus, and then looked at the textbook in his hand, thought for a while, and said, "Teach you to cook potions for Merlin oculus or meditation." Snape already knew the effect of Merlin's magic circle. He definitely wouldn't be foolish to think that a potion would change 2 ways to improve his strength. Considering that since Li Feng demonstrated the 2 methods in front of him, he must have other goals. Snape couldn't help but eager for strength and asked, "What else do you want to change with another method?" Li Feng scratched his eyebrows, and Shanshan said, "Do you have a magic booster potion?" Snape couldn't help but twitched his mouth, and said angrily, "Be realistic, you might as well ask me if I have a formula." Li Feng blinked. "Although I haven't learned how to make potions, but in the future, when I learn the process of making potions and have the formula in hand, can't I configure it myself? At that time, it is okay to drink the magic boosting potion as boiled water." Snape knew what the other person was thinking as soon as he looked at Li Feng's expression, and said silently, "I'm very clear to tell you that I have a recipe, but without mentioning the difficulty of boiling the magic potion. It's not something a rookie like you can learn, just say those. Where are you looking for extinct materials?" Li Feng grinned, silently thinking, "It is extinct material for you, but in other worlds, it may be the weeds on the roadside. And listening to your tone, I think you are not using magic. The augmentation potion is a treasure, it just happens to be cheaper for me. Meditation or Merlin's magic ring, change your teaching and the formula of the magic booster potion." Although Snape was eager to improve his strength, he also knew how large and difficult the contents of potions were. It was not something he could finish teaching if he wanted to. If Li Feng didn't have enough understanding of potions, the teaching time would be even longer. So as a professor at Hogwarts, he thought he didn't have so much time to teach Li Feng. After all, he still had a large group of students to teach and to correct his homework. With a hint of regret, Snape threw the textbook from his school days to Li Feng, turned and left the secret room and said, "Sorry, I don't have time to teach you." Li Feng seemed to understand what Snape was thinking, and he thought for a while and said, "Why?" Compared with Merlin's magic circle, Snape is more inclined to trade meditation ideas. Nep paused, turned around and looked at Li Feng, and said, "Since you have used temptation spells on me before, unless you teach me the idea of meditation first, I will consider whether to teach you during the summer vacation." The distrust in the other party's words made Li Feng both embarrassed and excited. The reason for the embarrassment didn't need to be said much. The excitement was because Li Feng heard that Snape had actually said that there was still hope for a deal. Immediately, Li Feng Shanshan said, "Ming thought will be given to you now. After you have confirmed the authenticity, you will come to the secret room to teach me the formula of the magic power amplification potion. How about?" It would not take long for Snape to determine the authenticity of the meditation thoughts. After thinking about it, he took the magic book from Li Feng to look through the meditation thoughts and made a record, while saying, "Prepare the crucible and materials at night. Potions obtained. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more."